South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener. We appreciate you spending some time with us and really looking forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely. And apologies to the 20 or 30 people that are currently watching us on YouTube. We got a late start. We just went live. Don't know. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties, I think. But we are on YouTube now. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Including Scott in the chat says it's a good day for letter carriers minus the snow in Massachusetts. No Limit Soldier says thank you. Claydonia says good morning out here delivering the mail. Glad to hear it. Amanda says good morning from New Jersey. Alex says United Faculty of Florida hearts the Valley Labor Report. Really appreciate it. Arif says Rahm Emanuel made Al Capone look tame. 561 Enrique says good morning. Shout out from South Florida. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And just want to make sure that I say here at the top of the show, we will be talking to Mike Caref at noon Central. We will be talking to Mike Caref at noon Central. He is National Business Agent, Region 3 for the National Association of Letter Carriers, about the NALC's overwhelming contract rejection. But again, we will not be doing that until noon Central. So if you're just here for that, then you can come back at noon and we'll be having that conversation.
Or you could hang out because we have lots of good stuff planned.
Exactly,
this
we
morning.
do. We've got
lots of good conversations today.
Exactly. Lots of great stuff we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from January the 24th to the 31st. In new union campaigns, the employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 200 workers at Le Diplomat in Washington, D.C. demonstrated support for unionization with Unite Here Local 25. This restaurant appears to have joined St. Anselm and Pastis in rejecting voluntary recognition. Still no petitions at Rasiki or Modena, where workers have also requested voluntary recognition. The workers are organizing rallies and marches to pressure the companies. 18 workers at Starbucks in St. Louis, Missouri filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United, as did 22 workers at another location in Katy, Texas. 150 workers at Transdev Services in Dallas, Texas filed a petition to hold a union election with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 1338. 4 workers at Swartz Pipeline in Olympia, Kentucky filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry, UA Local 798. 15 workers at the Richmond Electricians Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee in Richmond, Virginia filed a petition to hold a union election with the IAMAW. 46 workers at KR Contracting in Washington, D.C. filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Government Security Officers of America, UGSOA Local 337. 19 workers at Johnson Controls Fire Protection in North Little Rock, Arkansas filed a petition to hold a union election with UA's Road Sprinkler Fitter Local 669. In campaign updates, the International Association of Machinists, IAM, the Association of Flight Attendants, AFA, CWA, and the Teamsters have had a long, ongoing campaign to organize ramp workers, flight attendants, and mechanics, respectively, at Delta Airlines. The IAM is reporting that they and the AFA are, quote, getting close to filing for a union election. In election results, workers at Siemens USA in Fort Worth, Texas voted 197 to 29 in favor of unionization with the IBEW Local 220. 270 workers at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in Lakeland, Florida voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 79, as did 40 workers at the Louisville, Kentucky location with Local 783. 20 workers at Vestas Services in Vinton, Virginia voted 7-0 in favor of unionization with Teamsters Local 171. 11 workers at AEP Texas in Corpus Christi, Texas voted unanimously in favor of unionization with IBEW Local 738. 240 workers at Laboratory Corporation of America in Tucker, Georgia filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, UFCW, but the petition was withdrawn within the same week. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW Local 219, as the union representing 18 workers at Lockheed Martin in Lexington, Fayette, Kentucky, but this petition was also withdrawn within the same week. 10 workers at Northwood Health Systems in New Martinsville, West Virginia, voted 3-7 against unionization with the Northwood Workers Union, an independent organization. In settlements, grievances, and unfair labor practices, Unite Here, Local 737 in Orlando, Florida, is ramping up pressure on a Disney Springs restaurant to rehire an employee fired for union activity. In strikes and bargaining updates, the National Association of Letter Carriers voted overwhelmingly to reject a tentative agreement with the Postal Service. In response, Build a Fighting NALC BFN, a reform caucus within the union, put out a statement saying that the result is a victory for our union and a rejection of the current national leadership and its approach. Further, BFN is calling on the national union to work with local unions to organize contract rallies to build support for a strong contract. Mike Caref, national business agent for Region 3 of the NALC and a candidate for president of the National Union in 2026, has a survey on his website encouraging carriers to share their reasons for voting no. He is also planning a march in Washington, D.C. to demand a fair contract on March 23rd. Starbucks and Starbucks Workers United announced in a joint statement that both parties have agreed to bring in a mediator to assist the parties in reaching a framework for single-store contracts. Michelle Eisen says that, quote, going back to the bargaining table with a professional mediator involved is a positive step forward toward winning fair contracts for union baristas. Michelle Eisen is a union barista in New York, part of the first store to unionize. The Teamsters say they have reached a tentative agreement on a new contract with Costco to cover their 18,000 members, narrowly avoiding a strike by only hours. The TA will be sent to members for a ratification vote. Additionally, the company announced a raise to $30 an hour for most employees at non-union stores, undoubtedly tied to the gains the Teamsters likely won in the new agreement. Workers at the University of North Carolina, unionized with UE Local 150, delivered a petition with 2,300 signatures on it to the Chancellor of the university to demand a raise in the minimum wage on campus to $25 an hour, to raise grad worker stipends to $40,000 a year, and to meet and confer with the union over changes in working conditions. The Trump administration sent an email encouraging most federal workers to resign by February 6th, kicking off lots of discussions about the fact that this is likely not even a legal offer. Further, the administration has been issuing a significant amount of firings of federal workers perceived to be in conflict with the ideology of the new administration, including workers in the U.S. Foreign Aid Office. The HR director at USAID alleged that some such firings in his office violated the law and informed the agency and DOGE, which is who was instructing him to carry out these firings, that he would not comply. He sent an email to his employees informing them that he would likely be fired as a result of his actions. Following the ostensible buyout offer, an email was sent to probationary employees that reads like a thinly veiled threat of mass layoffs. Responding to the closure of DEIA offices and firing of personnel, AFGE has stated that, quote, the directive to review employment practices must comply with existing collective bargaining agreements. If agencies attempt to implement changes that conflict with collective bargaining agreements, locals should notify their districts, councils, and AFGE National. Locals are encouraged to comply and then file a grievance to uphold the negotiated terms. In political and legislative updates, in an unexpected move, Trump fired the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, Jennifer Abruzzo. Biden did the same thing to Peter Robb, the general counsel for the NLRB for Trump's first term. The general counsel is responsible for deciding which cases the board takes up. In an unexpected move, however, something that has never happened in the history of the country's nearly 100-year-old labor relations regime, and one which directly violates the National Labor Relations Act, Trump dismissed a sitting member of the board, Gwen Wilcox. This removal means that the board cannot meet because it no longer has a quorum, so it cannot decide cases. He cited concerns that he felt that the two are, quote, unfair to employers in his email dismissing them. Matt Brunig notes that the author of the email is not very familiar with the NLRB, Wilcox, or Abruzzo. It refers to both Abruzzo and Wilcox as, quote, members of the National Labor Relations Board multiple times. Only Wilcox is a board member. Abruzzo is the general counsel. It also refers to Wilcox and Abruzzo as, quote, commissioners multiple times. There is no commissioner role at the NLRB. In response to the firing of Wilcox and the OPM memo encouraging resignation, the union representing workers at the NLRB condemned the actions, ending with a meme saying, "Resign, fork, get about it." You get it? Because the subject of the email was fork in the road. Donald Trump issued another executive order saying, quote, union contracts executed in the 30 days prior to the inauguration of a new president and that purport to remain in effect despite the inauguration of a new president and administration shall not be approved. Although it is important to note, as Bloomberg labor reporter Josh Idelson has, that the order does not purport to invalidate fully approved collective bargaining deals reached in Biden's final weeks. It just tells agency heads not to approve any that were still pending approval and restricts them from signing union deals in the weeks after the 2028 election. The business manager for IBEW Local 508 in Savannah, Georgia, has an op-ed out in the Savannah Morning News cautioning Congress and the Trump administration against killing investments in clean energy, particularly given the massive amounts of jobs that have been created in Georgia. Ted Cruz introduced legislation to abolish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. A bipartisan resolution, House Resolution 70, was introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives, meant to signal opposition to any privatization attempts that was introduced last week with support from the National Association of Letter Carriers. Florida officials announced that they are willing to spend up to $500 million in public funds to support immigration enforcement, and yet they only spend $2 million enforcing child labor laws. In internal union affairs, in extremely depressing news, union density declined yet again in 2024, finally hitting the dreaded single digits. Today, only 9.9% of U.S. workers are union members. The AFL-CIO tried to put on a brave face in their release on the numbers, but Hamilton Nolan had a much more realistic take on his Substack, saying that this sucks and something has to change. If we missed anything, you can let us know at tvlr.fm/contact. I will note that this was an extremely condensed version of Last Week in Southern Labor. A full version of Last Week in Southern Labor will be sent out as a newsletter. You can subscribe at tvlr.fm. And many more things will be included. This was about half of the things that we included in the newsletter, but we can only get to so much of it. So anyway, if we missed anything important, though, let us know, tvlr.fm/contact. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back to talk to Patricia Todd about a local hire ordinance in Birmingham and the Alabama legislative session. Stay tuned.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPACT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. We might respond to it on the next program. We have on the line right now Patricia Todd, the Southern Policy Manager for Jobs to Move America, also a former legislator in the state of Alabama. Patricia, welcome to the program.
Issues at
Oh, I'm sorry. We've got you now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's good to be here with you all. We have a lot to cover in these challenging times.
Yes, indeed we do. And we appreciate the work that you're doing here in Alabama. Genuinely, when I send out the email letting folks know that we're live, I mentioned that there's some genuinely hopeful news in the state of Alabama. So hopefully, we've got some more depressing stuff to cover later in the show. But I think that we're going to be covering mostly good things with you, which is surprising. So let's start with Birmingham. That's the city that you live in, the city that you represented in the legislature. And what we're going to be talking about is a local hire ordinance that was recently passed by the Birmingham City Council. Jobs to Move America was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the primary advocate for this local hire ordinance. So explain to us what the ordinance does and how and what Jobs to Move America's role was in getting it passed.
Well, we've been working on this for a year and a half with the city, starting with the mayor's office and then the chair of the Economic Development Committee. And it's focused on the infrastructure money that's going to come into the municipalities and states. And we wrote a resolution that requires to require their contractors to hire at least 30% of employees from the Birmingham metro area, and then 15% from pre-apprenticeship programs. Now, it wasn't as forceful as we wanted, but it's a step. It's the first one in Alabama. We would have liked to see it included minimum wage scale, priority hiring of people from marginalized communities. But this is a beginning, and it passed unanimously.
Wow.
And so we're moving on to another city to see if we can get the same thing done.
And so this is only related to federal funds. I saw that the federal funds were mentioned in your press statements about it. So this is not generally applicable to Birmingham construction expenditures. This is just about any money that we're getting from these federal infrastructure dollars. We're going to prioritize hiring local Birmingham residents.
Here's the problem we have in Alabama. The Alabama legislature has power to preempt local resolutions or laws. And years ago, the city of Birmingham passed a resolution to have raise the minimum wage in Birmingham to $15. The state legislature preempted it, so they couldn't do it. So we have to be very careful in how we, and these funds allow for local hire, but that's why we can't expand it to be just all contracting. We hope in the future that we can. You know, this is taxpayers' money, and the one thing that we focus on at Jobs to Move America is that when jobs are created through taxpayer funds, whether it be through procurement, contracting, or economic tax incentives, that they must be good jobs and go to people who really need them. And that's, the basis of the resolution. And the city council members got it because we have a high poverty rate in Birmingham and a high unemployment rate. And so the pre-apprenticeship programs will give some of those people access to good skill training to be used down the road. So it is a win. It's a major victory. And we hope other municipalities will, follow suit.
And so there's thinking that because this resolution is related to federal funds that come into the city, that maybe the legislature doesn't have authority to preempt the city's distribution of federal funds. Is that the thinking?
Correct. The way that the funding was worded by the Biden administration allowed for local hire. Now, we're obviously in dangerous territory moving forward, because we do not know what the current administration is going to do in regard to things like this. It's a very scary time.
Right. And so the and that you mentioned that the and so what you're referring to there is that payments to or that expenditures of funds related to at least, as I understand it, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law have been stopped by the Trump administration so far, and I don't think that we're going to have time to do a whole big breakdown of it later, but this is already resulting in the elimination of jobs. In Somerset, Massachusetts, there's local reporting about how a proposed factory that project has already been nixed, and that's killed 200 to 350 jobs in just that one smaller city in Massachusetts. And this kind of stuff is going on all across the country. And so, what kind of impact are you anticipating that this is going to have on the city of Birmingham?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's the honest truth. I mean, every day we're shocked by something this current administration does. And all of this will end up in federal courts and have to be sorted out on that level, which is going to take a lot of time and energy. Meanwhile, we have a couple of bills we're supporting in the upcoming legislative session that starts next week. This is going to be a rough time, and we focus on, again, creating good jobs and increasing accountability and transparency in government. So we have a bill that was introduced last year that almost passed. Nobody voted against it. It was just a matter of timing, that would claw back incentives from companies who found guilty of child labor. And you all just talked about child labor. It's been a real problem in the Hyundai supply chain. And so this is a way for us to sort of talk about that. And I think it will pass this year pretty quickly. It's Senate Bill 22 by Senator Coleman. The other ones we have is, this is something interesting. I just found out that there is a state law that requires temporary staffing agencies that are very predatory to be licensed by the Department of Revenue. But when I talk to the Department of Revenue, they're not enforcing the law. So we're introducing a bill that requires them to follow the law and to license these temporary staffing agencies. They're not, these temporary staffing agencies take money from the workers they place in there. They're just very predatory. Another one we have is called a pro-family workplace requirement. If you work in manufacturing and they have a 3-shift rotation, a lot of times you'll show up for work and in the middle of your shift, you're required to work overtime. And then they also can change your shift without a lot of notice and without your permission, which has a huge impact on family time. If we're supposed to be a state that, values families, then we should require these companies to not have mandatory overtime and to give adequate notice and gain permission if they're going to change your shift. You can imagine if you've got little kids that are playing in sports or you have childcare needs, having your shift change or mandatory overtime can have an adverse effect on your family. Now, do I think this is going to pass? No. But I think we need to start pushing legislators to understand that you have got to hold these companies accountable and make sure that families are not adversely affected by their management style. We also are supporting a bill to mandate the Department of Commerce to list any clawbacks. And a clawback is like if I give $1 million to Hyundai and they don't meet the requirements of the agreement, we can claw back some of those incentives. But right now we don't know who they've clawed back incentives from. So we're requesting them to do that. And then the other one is to remove the exemption from the Open Records Act for incentive agreements and their annual reports. These are all held in secret. Even legislators don't have access to it. So we're going to try to see if we can fix that. There's so much work to do around these issues.
And so we've already we've jumped into JMA's legislative agenda. You've been talking about some of the priorities that Jobs to America has for the upcoming legislative session. You mentioned the child labor clawback bill, that's SB 22, sponsored by State Senator Marika Coleman, and you mentioned several other policy priorities. Have any of the others have bills been filed on any of the others yet? And if so, what are the bill numbers? Just for
they will be filed this week. So I can get numbers. I also want to mention that I'm doing an advocacy training. A lot of people don't understand how the legislature works and how they can be an effective advocate. And so that will be Tuesday night at 6 via Zoom. If people are interested, they can contact me at ptodd@jobstomoveamerica.org. And it's free. And because I've been a legislator before, I know how that system works. Whereas other people don't understand what really happens in the back room. And I served for 12 years, so I sort of bring my expertise into this training.
And I'm sure that we'll have some listeners that will be attending that. Look forward to hearing what comes out of that and look forward to seeing those bills be filed. The House Democratic Caucus, the minority party, obviously in the state of Alabama, the Democrats in the state House have released their kind of legislative platform for the 2025 legislative session. I know that at least on the child labor clawback bill, the bill that would revoke tax incentives from employers who violate child labor law, you feel very confident about that. I want you to, if you would, explain why you feel confident about the passage of that, considering that I did not see that named in the Democrats' platform, nor any of these other legislative priorities that Jobs to Move America has. Now there is some that I think that you could fit some of these specific bills under the broad priorities. It's like the legislative thing for the Democrats is like is a bunch of big concept words, like freedom and liberty and stuff. And so there are ways that you can kind of fit some of your priorities under these. So why do you feel confident specifically about the child labor bill? And does it concern you that none of JMA's priorities are specifically mentioned in the Democratic legislative agenda?
Well, if you look at both the Republican and Democratic agendas, they're very general. They're wordy. They're supposed to, like justice and freedom, and who's going to oppose that? But they didn't list any specific legislation in either one of them. Last year, when this bill was introduced, it passed out of the Senate committee and out of the Senate and the House committee unanimously. We just ran out of time, so that's why I feel positive it's going to pass this year. And let's be honest, who's going to be for child labor? I mean, it's a pretty easy issue. And of course, the Department of Labor has sued Hyundai and their supply chain. Of course, that's making its way through the courts. We don't know what's going to happen with that. But this just sort of gives us an opportunity to talk about the problem in manufacturing in Alabama, and that many of these plants are using child labor.
Right. Well, we're really looking forward to, seeing some of these priorities pass through and get through the legislature. Hopefully that will happen. I know that, labor will be a big supporter of this. Who do you see as some of the groups and constituencies that are going to have the best ability to kind of persuade, because it's going to have to take persuasion of the Republican supermajority to get any of this through? How is that going to happen?
Well, one of our biggest allies is Alabama Rise. I notice you have their T-shirt on. We work very closely with them, so they'll be a great benefit. And we have a lot of local unions that are involved. The real issue is people do not contact their legislators for whatever reason. They don't know who they are. They think, well, they don't agree with me, so they're not going to listen to me, but you've got to use your voice. And other allies we work with very closely is Greater Birmingham Ministries, NAACP, you all. We have a lot of environmental groups that are engaged in our work. So we probably have about 32 organizations involved in the coalition that we work all this stuff with. But Alabama Rise is our strongest ally.
Alabama Rise does really good work. Obviously, just for full disclosure, Adam does work for Alabama Rise. He's the Northeast Alabama organizer, but I do not. And I think that they're definitely one of the best organizations down there. The pro-worker nonprofit advocacy organizations, working with the legislature. They do really great work, research, advocacy, and the whole thing. So, and what you mentioned about not contacting their legislator, I mean, like 80%, Adam says, of people don't know who their legislator is. So, definitely you want to get acquainted with that, and you want to make sure that your legislator knows which of these priorities, if any, that you support. And frankly, I think that all of these priorities are really very, very common sense things. Exactly like you said, this is all mostly attached to funding, public funds from the state of Alabama, from the citizens of Alabama, from the workers of Alabama. And where my dollars are concerned, I do not want my dollars going to pay for the exploitation of children. I do not want my dollars going to underpay workers while CEOs and executives make off like bandits and make millions and millions of dollars from state contracts while their workers are on food stamps. That's not the kind of work that I want to fund or incentivize with public funds. And I do not believe that is a radical proposition. I think that actually, if you talk to most people, no matter who they voted for in November, they would agree with that sentiment. They would agree with the idea that if my money is going towards something, collectively, the public funds of the state of Alabama is going towards to pay for services, to pay for goods or services, we should want those goods and services to be produced by people being paid good wages with good benefits and things like that. And it shouldn't be just for people at the top of these contractors to get rich. That's not a very radical kind of
it is common sense. Alabama has a high poverty rate due to a lot of factors, including not adequately funding public education. Housing is expensive. And when you pay workers more, everybody benefits. They have more spending money, so the economy improves. It's not fair that a CEO could make, $5 million and a worker's working for $13 an hour, producing the product they sell. So we've got a lot of work to do. And if people don't know who your legislator is, you can go to the Alabama Secretary of State's office, enter your address, and it'll give you contact information about who they are. And you've got to do that. It takes 10 minutes to contact your legislator.
Thank you so much for your time, Patricia Todd. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that you leave our listeners with before we let you go?
Yeah, I just appreciate what y'all do and having these open discussions, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Same to you. Patricia Todd, Southern Policy Manager for Jobs to Move America. Really appreciate your time on the show today. Definitely, folks should check out Jobs to Move America and the work that they're doing. They do lots of really good work, and you can get involved in the stuff that they're doing. So really, thank you so much. All right, folks. So we're going to be taking a break here in a moment, but before we do that, I figured that it wouldn't be a bad idea to introduce some of our new audiences to us. We have, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, we have gotten on the radio on 2 new radio stations, WLWI in Montgomery, Alabama, and WGOW in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we really are excited to be talking to you folks who are listening to us on the radio in those new media markets. Also, we're excited to be talking to so many people on YouTube. We've got a bigger audience on YouTube than normal, I think probably in anticipation of the discussion of the rejection of the tentative agreement between the National Association of Letter Carriers and the U.S. Postal Service. Just a reminder on that, we will not be having that conversation until noon. As you all know, if you're listening to this in anticipation of that conversation, you know that the news of the rejection did not come until like 5 or 6 p.m. yesterday, right? So this conversation has been tacked on to an already quite full show, so I hope you will understand us not being able to fit that in until the tail end of the program, but we're really excited to be talking to Mike Caref about that. It's going to be a good conversation about a huge thing for city letter carriers. But so for folks who are listening, but we do have, between now and noon, we've got lots of good, interesting and relevant stories to be talking about. So for folks who have never listened to the program before, whether you're on one of our 2 new radio stations or you're one of the folks listening for the NALC coverage, just a quick introduction. Again, my name is Jacob Morrison. I am a longtime union member. I've been a union member for the better part of a decade now. Member of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 1858. I am also president of the North Alabama Area Labor Council, the regional body of the AFL-CIO. That is the largest federation of unions in the country, made up of some 61 national and international unions, comprised of 15 million working people in the United States. And here in North Alabama, we have 12 affiliates. We represent some several thousand workers here in Huntsville and the greater North Alabama area. And we started this radio program, the Valley Labor Report, about 5 years ago, if you can believe it. I started it with David Story, then president of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama, because we felt like, and still feel like, that there is not enough coverage of the issues that working people face from the perspective of working people. We also felt like there was not enough popular understanding of even what a union is, much less what it can do for you in the workplace. And so we wanted to combat that failure of the media and our popular culture. And we wanted to do that on the radio specifically. We specifically did not want to just do a podcast because doing a podcast, generally speaking, you're only going to be talking to people who already agree with you. And so we wanted to be on the radio. And so we're very proud now to be on 6 radio stations in 4 states with a variety of audiences. We are on conservative radio stations. We are on black talk radio stations. We are on progressive community radio stations. And I think one of our stations that we're on is a country music station. So we are very excited and very honored to have the support to be able to do that. We are supported by several different unions, both local and national unions, and that's the only way that we're able to do this. And so that's kind of the project in a nutshell, is that we want to talk about, we want to educate people about what unions are, what they can do for you, and how you can join a union and get involved and make your workplace better, build a better life for yourself, your family, and your community. And we think that, honestly, the best way to do that is through organization within the labor movement, building a strong, militant, and democratic union. And we also talk about the news as is relevant to working people. We talk about contract negotiations. We talk about union campaigns. We interview, as you just saw, policy experts, legislators, politicians, and union members, non-union members, just working people, journalists, academics, historians, all sorts of folks to bring relevant information and content to working people, with a particular emphasis on the South and the state of Alabama, where we are from. But of course, we think it's relevant for folks all across the country. Adam Keller is a union stagehand, a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE Local 900, and, as I just said, Northeast Alabama organizer for Alabama Arise, where they recently unionized with CWA Local 3908. Adam, do you want to say a couple of things by way of introduction to yourself and why you joined the project 3 years ago?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually closer to 4 years ago almost. Jeez. At this point. It was spring 2021. I joined the Valley Labor Report. As Jacob said, we are a grassroots media cooperative. There's actually 7-8 of us now that are working in this project, even though Jacob and I are typically the only ones you see in front of the camera. And, like Jacob, like, our brother David, really just felt like working people's stories were not being told in the media, especially here in the South. There's so much propaganda, and the bosses and politicians have their own media, and I feel like working people should have our own media. And I have been active in the labor movement for over a dozen years now. I really believe that the labor movement is key to fixing this country, frankly, and making this state a better place for all of us. And organizing the South, I think, is particularly important for all of us, wherever you live, wherever you're tuning in from, because the South has long been a bastion of anti-unionism, and it has long been home to some of the worst working conditions and quality of life for everyday working class people. You can see it in our poverty rates, you can see it in our healthcare, our infrastructure, our education, our incarceration, and on and on and on we can go. I got my start as a high school history teacher, and I was not raised to be doing what I'm doing and preaching what I'm preaching, that's for sure. But as a teenager, I started reading a lot. I guess I read my whole life, and reading history in particular really opened my eyes, and it opened my eyes to new ways of thinking, just different perspectives about the world, about this country, about the South. And, so I wanted to share that power of historical knowledge with young people, particularly young people going through a tough time. My teenage years weren't really great for me. So, I was really interested in that and the idea of giving back. And so I got in public education, taught for a few years, mostly here in Huntsville City Schools. And I started teaching the same year the Chicago Teachers Union went on strike for the school Chicago students deserved, back in 2012. And that really was another awakening for me, because it helped me connect the dots between what happened in the classroom, what happened in the schools, and what was happening in the community, and how it was all connected. And it motivated me to get involved in organizing in the workplace and organizing my coworkers. And so I got really involved both inside and outside of the AEA, the Alabama Education Association, and ended up working for them for over 5 years. I was a field staffer representing about 1,500 Huntsville City Schools employees, and did that, won some fights, lost some fights, learned a lot for sure. A lot about working with diverse folks and building coalitions. And, that's something that those of us in Alabama who do want to see a better Alabama, we learn pretty quickly. We have to be able to talk to a lot of different kind of people, work with a lot of different kind of people, sometimes issue by issue, sometimes, case by case. But, it was a very interesting experience to represent so many folks and to try to build coalitions with the community, with parents and allies, often, at odds with the business establishment and kind of the broader power structures here in Huntsville and North Alabama. And I got very involved in my staff union during that time as well, which, surprise, surprise, was not necessarily appreciated by those in management. And I ended up, going through some tough times during the pandemic, like a lot of folks, and was needing something different. I got my foot in the door with the Stagehands Union, told them up front, I didn't know how to hold a wrench really, but I could write a hell of a grievance if they needed that. And they showed me the ropes, literally in this case, and helped me, become a stagehand and work with IATSE 900. Really proud to be a member, and been a member there for a few years, and represent them at the North Alabama Area Labor Council, and serve as a trustee and chair of our politics committee at the Labor Council, and always encourage our union brothers and sisters to get involved with their local labor council. If you're here in our area, definitely hit us up, but if you're not, get involved with your labor council wherever you're at. They are supposed to be everywhere, across North America, across the country at least. And so I really encourage that. I believe there's tremendous power and potential when working people across industries and across unions come together and collaborate and strategize and organize together. So that's why I'm really, proud of the work we've been doing with the Labor Council. And I'm, proud of the work we've been doing on this show. As you mentioned, we've talked to some amazing people over the years. I think we've punched above our weight in terms of the quality of guests we've booked on this show. I mean, some really brilliant folks, everyone from rank and file workers to, some of the leading experts in their areas, some, amazing historians, people we've been reading for years. So we can only do that because we've had a lot of support from a lot of folks. You mentioned the unions. We, absolutely appreciate the union sponsorships that we've had over the years. We've had other folks run advertisements with us. That makes a difference. And then ultimately our biggest single source of revenue has been just the grassroots support, the donations from everyday working people chipping in $5, $10, $20 a month, whatever it may be. And that has really helped us grow this project from scratch. We are grassroots. We're not getting big checks from billionaires. We don't have the kind of infrastructure that you see on the other side from folks who are more friendly to businesses and employers and who are opposed to working people. Right? There's a lot of media out there that is not friendly to us. We care about amplifying the voices of everyday working class folks. We know that not everyone's going to agree with everything we say. That's fine. We are a nonpartisan show. We are partisans for the working class. That's our perspective and where we come from on these issues. In my opinion, the working class, we are the most diverse class. We are also the vast majority, and there is tremendous power when we come together and recognize, our common interest. We all want better lives for ourselves and our families. We want to be able to retire in dignity. We want quality health care. We want, quality environment to raise our kids in. These are issues that resonate across the spectrum, and we try to speak to those issues, speak to people in their real, material interest, and work together where we can and find common ground. So we appreciate the engagement, the folks who chat on YouTube, the folks who call and leave voicemails, the folks who call in live, send us emails with your feedback. That's really appreciated. And, that's why we do this, is to try to reach people. We have heard people tell us they got involved in their union because of the show, that they found out they had a union at their workplace because of the show, joined, got active. We heard one testimony of a brother out in Texas, I believe, who actually converted his business to a worker co-op after hearing an interview we did on the show. Stories like that really motivate us to keep doing this thing and keep building this project and reaching folks, because there does need to be more of a message of people power, solidarity, right? Folks coming together and building a mass movement of everyday folks to really push back against the wealthy, powerful elites that run this state and run this country. That message needs to get out there. We've got to unify more folks around that. And that's why we do what we do. So we appreciate the support and, appreciate everyone tuning in today. And hopefully you'll stay tuned for the long haul.
Absolutely. We're going to head to a break. We're going to be right back, and we're going to break down the fork in the road email that federal workers got last week. Stay tuned. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1010. 1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Just union talk radio program in the southern United States. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. You can leave us a voicemail there. The lines are not open yet, but we will be opening the lines after we begin our noon coverage, our NALC contract coverage, which will begin at noon Central. We'll open up the lines there. Interested in hearing from letter carriers. First, we need to talk about this fork in the road email that was sent to nearly every single federal employee, although postal workers and other workers involved in national security are exempt from this email, even though they received this email. A new sector of the federal workforce that was exempt from this offer, quote unquote, is newly the air traffic controllers. I wonder why that is. But so here's the email that was sent to basically every single federal employee last week. I'm not going to read the entire part of it. I'm not going to read the entire email. It's rather long, but I want to hit some highlights. They talk about how during the first week of his administration, President Trump issued a number of directives concerning the federal workforce. And they say that the reform of the federal workforce will be significant and will be built around 4 pillars. 1, return to office. The substantial majority of federal employees who have been working remotely since COVID will be required to return to their physical office spaces 5 days a week going forward. We also expect our physical offices to undergo meaningful consolidation and divestitures, potentially resulting in physical office relocations for a number of federal workers. Now, this is kind of confusing because if you're going to be bringing people back into the office, why are you going to be divesting ownership of these buildings from the federal government? Is the plan to pack federal workers into smaller office buildings like sardines, or is the plan to sell off federally owned properties to landlord leeches who will then be able to bloodsuck off of the federal government and collect rents instead of the government owning these buildings? I'm not totally sure what that is. We've also talked about how the return to office stuff is so ludicrous. We won't dive into it more here, but you can check our previous coverage of it. I also said there will be a performance culture. The federal workforce should be comprised of the best America has to offer. Put a pin in that for a moment. We're going to come back to that later. The federal workforce should be comprised of the best America has to offer. That's an interesting sentiment. We'll come back to that momentarily. The third is a more streamlined and federal workforce, blah, blah, blah. They just want to be able to attack federal workers willy-nilly. And fourth is enhanced standards of conduct. The federal workforce should be comprised of employees who are reliable, loyal, and trustworthy. What does it mean to be loyal? Who are we to be loyal to as federal workers? It does not say. But with the actions of the first administration, one could be forgiven for interpreting that as meaning loyalty to Trump rather than the mission that you are hired to execute, or loyalty to the Constitution, or loyalty to the American people. Continuing on in this email, though, it's important to point out that they say each of the pillars outlined above will be pursued in accordance with applicable law, consistent with your agency's policies, and to the extent permitted under relevant collective bargaining agreements. Continuing to emphasize the importance of all workers, but particularly in this moment, federal workers, are, as we are at the tip of the assault on the working class in the country. We are going to be facing these attacks first as federal workers. It's important for federal workers to organize. And a lot of these attacks, again, even admittedly in this email, can only be carried out to the extent permitted under collective bargaining agreements. You need a union, and you need a union contract. So they continue and they say, if you choose not to continue in your current role in the federal workforce, we thank you for your service to your country, and you will be provided a dignified, fair departure from the federal government utilizing a deferred resignation program. This program begins effective January 28th and is available to all federal employees until February 6th. If you resign under this program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload and will be exempted from all applicable in-person work requirements until September 30th, 2025, or earlier if you choose to accelerate your resignation for any reason. The details can be found below. There are some details here, and it includes a deferred resignation letter that you are to send if you want to resign. It says, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from employment with my employing agency effective September 30th, 2025. Effective September 30th. 2025. This is being framed as a buyout where you get 7 months of pay for not working. Importantly, nowhere in this email, nowhere in the attachments to this email is a guarantee of pay of this being a severance package. That is nowhere in this email that you would be replying to and agreeing to the terms of. I would not take this because it is not iron. I mean, just for that reason. We'll get into other reasons you shouldn't take it. But just for that reason, this says you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload. That does not say you will not have a daily workload. The only guarantee here is that you will be exempted from all applicable in-person work requirements. It does not say you will not have to work. It does not say that. It just simply doesn't. Further, in the FAQ, now there is a FAQ that says, will I be expected to work? And it says no, but that's just in an FAQ. That is not in the document that you are responding affirmatively to. Further, it is probably not legal. Although, of course, in this environment, that doesn't really matter, apparently, whether things are legal or not. But the American Prospect points out that the executive branch has no authority from Congress to offer a mass buyout to federal workers. In fact, the OPM website, the Office of Personnel Management website itself, clearly states that the limit for incentive packages for voluntary resignations is $25,000. $25,000 is far less than 8 months of pay for the average federal worker. Further, and like I was alluding to with this language in the email, Trump might stiff you. Trump has done it with contractors. In fact, there was some reporting as to the reason why Trump was so often in outside venues during his second campaign. One of the reasons for that is that he stiffed so many of the venues during his first campaign, right? So Trump very well might just not follow through on this. He has done that in the private sector, and so did Elon when he fired a bunch of Twitter employees. In fact, that fork in the road email was modeled on a similar email that was sent to Twitter employees when Musk sent it out. He offered a very generous, or kind of generous, severance package to Twitter employees, and he did not pay it. He didn't pay it. And courts have found such. Okay? Further, here's another reason you shouldn't take this offer. The OPM has, in their frequently asked questions about this, that it says a question, can I get another job? They say yes. I'm going to continue reading momentarily. They say yes, but the OPM does not have authority over ethics guidelines in individual agencies, and many individual agencies have ethics guidelines and policies that say you cannot have other employment full-time at all or even part-time without the consent of your employing agency, not Office of Personnel Management. So if you accept this buyout and then you go and get another job and it turns out that you don't have to work for 7 months, which is, again, still up in the air, if you take that and then you get a second job, you could be like, there could be problems with that. There could be problems with that. But here's another one. We're continuing on with this answer. Can I get another job? They say yes. The way to enhance American greatness is to move people from the low productivity public sector to the high productivity private sector. Folks, they want to destroy the government. They want to destroy the government. Okay? I don't know how else you could put that. This contradicts, it contradicts what's said in the email that the American government should be comprised of the best America has to offer. Should the American government be comprised of the best America has to offer? Or should we be moving people from the low productivity public sector to the high productivity private sector? What a load of freaking BS. BS. It's just so, it is so insulting to the men and women who serve the American public. that they say that these people who are now in charge of our government, and we'll talk about who these people are in a moment, but these people who are now in charge of our government are saying that way to enhance American greatness is to move people from the public sector to the private sector, from the low productivity public sector to the high productivity private sector. That is a load of garbage. And if you work in the federal government, you should be insulted by what these people think of you. The federal government is the largest employer of veterans in the country. Some 30 to 40% of all federal workers are veterans. They think that these people are low productivity people. They think that there is no role for government. Now let's talk about those people who have taken over our government. Here's more from the American Prospect. Elon Musk's associates have apparently taken over the Office of Personnel Management, according to a rundown from Wired and a Reddit post by somebody claiming to be an anonymous OPM staffer. The chief of staff, Amanda Scales, worked for Musk's AI firm. A former Tesla and Boring Company engineer is a senior advisor. Memos written by the OPM had metadata revealing authors as Project 2025 authors and conservative think tank veterans. The previous chief information officer was reassigned just a week into starting at the agency, apparently because he wouldn't set up this distribution list to all federal employees. According to the Redditor, there has been set up a separate server that looks like it's coming from OPM. At least 2 other OPM officials with Musk ties were so young, one just graduated from high school last year, that Wired chose not to name them. Here they are. Here's Wired's description of these 2 young OPM staffers. According to the same sources, other people at the top of the new OPM food chain include 2 people with apparent software engineering backgrounds whom Wired is not naming because of their ages. And that is freaking-sane. I don't give a damn how old these people are. If they are at the top of our government, we should know their freaking names. I don't care if they're 16. If they have authority over the whole government, we should know who the hell these people are. Okay. One, a senior advisor to the director, is a 21-year-old whose online resume touts his work for Palantir, the government contractor and analytics firm co-founded by billionaire Peter Thiel, who is its chair. And again, a 21-year-old, he's 21. He can drink alcohol. Why are we not naming this guy? The former CEO, again, this is Peter Thiel, the former CEO of PayPal and a longtime Musk associate. Thiel is a Trump supporter who helped bankroll the 2022 Senate campaign of his protege, Vice President J.D. Vance. It's important to remember J.D. Vance is just a Thiel plant. He would never be where he is without his billionaire backers. This is the other young guy that Wired is not naming because he's just a little boy, even though he's in charge of OPM. The other, who reports directly to Scales, graduated from high school in 2024. Graduated from high school in 2024. This kid is 19 or 20 years old, according to a mirrored copy of an online resume and his high school students magazine. He lists his jobs as a camp counselor and a bicycle mechanic among his professional experiences, as well as a summer role at Neuralink. This is insane. I mean, I love bicycle mechanics and I love camp counselors, but you need a little bit more experience to be running the largest employer in the world, the U.S. federal government. It's just ludicrous. Here's another person at the Office of Personnel Management, Andrew Closter, a self-described raging misogynist. He also used to sign up for his ex-Twitter account. The email that he used to sign up for his Twitter account appears in a leak for an escort service website. The IP address for the escort service website account is in Washington, D.C. So we've got this raging misogynist who is utilizing escorts another senior attorney at OPM. Love it. That's just awesome. And so let's get back to, again, do we want America's best and brightest serving in the federal government? Is a 19-year-old kid who graduated from high school in 2024 and whose previous professional experience includes being a camp counselor and a bicycle mechanic, is that the best America has to offer? What happened to DEI? As far as I can tell, the attack on DEI is just so that these people can get their toadies in office. And that leads me to the final reason the federal workers should not resign. That is because America freaking needs you. If you leave your job, then some freak whose only qualification is that they worked at one of Elon Musk's companies for 3 weeks is going to be in your job the next week. And we need people who actually give a damn about the job they're doing, who actually give a damn about the American people and the mission to be in these positions. So you should not take the offer because it's probably not legal. He very well might stiff you. And America needs you. The unions representing federal employees are echoing those sorts of sentiments, saying that you should not, for all of those reasons, you should not take it. Further, you need to get involved in your union. You need to find which union represents you. You need to find which union represents you, and you need to join it. If you are not a part of a union, if your workplace is not unionized, you need to get with one of the federal unions, and you need to unionize it. And so there you go. There you go. Don't don't resign. All right. We got one more segment that we want to run through really quickly before we wrap up. Adam, anything really quick?
Yeah, just get involved. If you are a federal worker, do not give in to fear and hype and division. It's time to organize with your coworkers, get to know them, stick together. Don't give in to this nonsense. I mean, this is pretty classic sabotage, and, it's unfortunate because folks want to loot the public treasury and sabotage public services that folks depend on. A lot of people can be negatively impacted and will be negatively impacted, but it's going to be up to us to organize and push back. I understand there are folks who are cheering what's happening and think it's great. And, I'm just not sure what planet they live on. But, I think you hit it. People have to get involved with their union, and it's important that you get involved now. With these threats happening, it's important you get involved now.
Absolutely. All right, so Boss Watch. Boss Watch is a segment that we try to do every week where we take a look at what bosses in the southern United States and the American colonies were up to. It's a mirror to last week in Southern labor. And the way that we've been compiling this segment over the years has been pretty simple. We've checked federal agencies tasked with enforcing worker protection laws and included their press releases about instances where they have begun or concluded enforcement actions against law-violating employers. Agencies like the Department of Labor, DOL, and divisions within it, like the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA, the Wage and Hour Division, WHD, as well as other agencies like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and others. We've occasionally included stories from the news, but in our experience, the news has rarely captured instances of this sort before the government enforcement agencies have. So we're going to continue to try to do this, but I just want to note that it's possible this will no longer be a viable way of doing this project in particular in the Trump era. Before the show last week, the Department of Labor announced that they were ceasing and desisting all enforcement related to Executive Order 11246, which Donald Trump rescinded. That EO, which was in place since the 1960s, instituted first by LBJ, included reporting requirements that helped the DOL identify potential episodes of discrimination. Since that release, there have been no announced enforcement actions, no new investigations, no new resolutions of cases. Typically, Typically, we saw 2 or 3 per week just from the DOL, just in the South, every single week. So obviously this is a concern. Of course, the entire EEOC is undoubtedly in Trump's crosshairs, and enforcement of other worker protection laws are likely to see decreased vigor. The only announcements from the EEOC since Trump's inauguration have been that the president appoints Andrea Lucas as EEOC acting chair, and a press release about removing gender ideology and restoring the EEOC's role of protecting women in the workplace. Ironically, there has been nothing since actually protecting women in the workplace, as was the case in the final press release of the Biden administration, where the EEOC brought a lawsuit against an Alabama employer for discriminating against women. That's interesting that despite restoring the EEOC's role of protecting women in the workplace, there have been no instances of protecting women in the workplace, and the very final act of the Biden EEOC was protecting Alabama women from a sexist employer. That's just interesting. Now, we did check, and we found a similar pause on press releases happened after 2017, when Trump came into office the first time, and they did not begin picking up until April or May. But even after that, enforcement actions were more limited than they were under Biden. So, not totally sure what we're going to do with this segment moving forward. But I want to say that we stand in solidarity with the civil servants whose jobs and missions are under attack by the Trump administration and who are trying to weather the storm to continue serving the American worker. We unironically and wholeheartedly thank you for your service. The law enforcement officials at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, the Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and any other federal agency tasked with protecting the American people. We thank you so much for the work that you've done over the years, and we hope that you can continue serving the American public over the next 4 years. So, since we don't have anything definitive to report yet, I figured I would take a look at just one workplace safety incident that happened last week, and that was the collision of a plane and a helicopter last week at the DCA airport. We've already seen reporting coming out that the air traffic controller that was in charge at that time over that area was doing 2 jobs, was doing a job that should be done only by 2 people. Short staffing at the FAA has been a long reported thing. The New York Times reported last year airline close calls happen far more often than was previously known. So far this year, this was back in 2023, close calls involving commercial airlines have been happening on average multiple times a week, according to a Times analysis of internal FAA records, as well as thousands of pages of federal safety reports and interviews with more than 50 current and former pilots, air traffic controllers, and federal officials. One problem, this is still from the New York Times piece from last year, is that despite repeated recommendations from safety authorities, the vast majority of U.S. airports have not installed warning systems to help prevent collisions on runways. But the most acute challenge is the nation's air traffic control facilities are chronically understaffed. While the lack of controllers is no secret, the shortages are more severe and are leading to more dangerous situations than previously known. As of May, this is in 2023 or 2024 again, only 3 of the 313 air traffic facilities nationwide had enough controllers to meet targets set by the FAA and the union representing the controllers. The Times found that many controllers are required to work 6-day work weeks and a schedule so fatiguing that multiple federal agencies have warned it could impede controllers' ability to do their jobs properly. There's a lot more reporting on that, but that is what's going on. And this idea this foolishness, and there's a guy in our chat saying, no, the attack on DEI is so airplane doors stay on at 30,000 feet and they stop crashing. That is just, frankly, just drivel. Pro-employer, pro-corporate drivel. There is absolutely no evidence that there have been decreased standards that led to anything like this, both at Boeing with the airplane doors and at the FAA with air traffic controllers. There has been consistent reporting about understaffing and about poor working conditions, both at Boeing and at the FAA. So if you are, Mark, and I know you to be a union member, if you are, instead of attacking the employing agencies and these corporations who are keeping workers' pay low, who are keeping conditions poor, who are making it difficult to have a high quality of life in these positions, which is keeping people from wanting to be in these positions, if you are, instead of focusing your attacks on that, focusing on DEI, you are just doing scab work. And you should be ashamed of yourself, frankly. Repent. Finally, we'll wrap up with Union Busters. This segment of Boss Watch covers national updates. It is sponsored by Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through union, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that union busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here is the new LM20 that was filed this week. Vistar in Livermore, California, hired LRI Consulting Services for $425 an hour. However, workers won their election 19-8, despite the high-paid union busting. In addition, the following LM20s were amended. LR Consultants amended their LM20 for S&S Activewear in Bolingbrook, Illinois, to include their compensation rate of $0 to $400 an hour. And the subcontractors of Labor Information Services, Jose Agraz and Cesar Lopez, amended their LM20s to add or change their compensation to $230 an hour for work at Merit Logistics in Tampa, Florida. Prior to becoming a union buster, Lopez was the human resources manager at National RV. He is from Mexico and is bilingual in English and Spanish. That is it for us today, folks. We really appreciate you tuning in. We've got a great overtime lined up for you, but if you're not able to find us online at the Valley Labor Report, we'll see you next week. All right, folks, we're off the air now. Like I said, we got a great overtime lined up for you folks. We're going to be talking to Jasmine Payne-Patterson, Senior State Policy Strategist at the Economic Policy Institute. Also going to be talking to Mike Caref, National Business Agent for Region 3 of the National Association of Letter Carriers, about the contract rejection by an overwhelming majority of letter carriers in the NALC. That interview will happen at 12 noon. So if you are just here for that, feel free to come back in about an hour. We'll be talking about that. If you're coming here just for that, you will know that the news came out late yesterday at like 5 or 6 p.m. So obviously we wanted to talk about it, and we wanted to talk about it as soon as possible. We didn't want to wait another week, so we tacked this on to the end of the show. So hope you'll understand the need, the kind of constraints that we were under there. So no hard feelings if you want to check out and come back later at noon. No hard feelings at all, but we've got some great stuff for you. We will also be breaking down the firing of people at the National Labor Relations Board by Donald Trump and more. So we got some really good stuff and relevant stuff for letter carriers. But again, you can check out and come back at noon. We're going to take a break really quick, and we'll be back with overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country and all over the world. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host here is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. We're taking voicemails right now. We'll open the phones once we bring Mike Caref on. Probably we'll be bringing Caref on at about 12 noon, and we'll be opening the call-in lines at about 12:15 Central Time. All my times are Central. So there you go. Looking forward to that conversation. We also have, we're going to be discussing the ramifications of the firing of people at the NLRB, and also talking to Jasmine Payne-Patterson about a shared agenda, shared pro-worker agenda for the Southern United States. Also breaking down the new union numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Not good, folks, not good. So here's a question, and I was talking to Adam about this during the break, and I just put a poll in the chat. Should we have moderators that limit stupid comments from pro-employer trolls? I have wrestled with this. We have, I am like a free speech kind of absolutist sort of guy. I have even been publicly opposed, in my personal life. I don't talk about it on the show a lot because we're a union show. But I have even been like publicly opposed to some of the deplatformings of really kind of radical fascist types on social media outfits. And so I have tried to do that kind of thing with the Valley Labor Report. I have, over the 5 years that we have been doing this show, I have only that I remember, and I remember it because I don't do it. I have only done it. I have only blocked a comment once, and that was because a person was using like a slur against somebody, and so I said, "Well, I'm not gonna have that in my comment section." But anything else, I've been kind of like laissez-faire about, and just because like it doesn't bother me to have. I mean, I can get kind of exercised about stuff, right? But it ultimately doesn't bother me to have people saying stupid things in the chat or in the comment section, and it drives engagement. And so I'm like, fine, whatever. If people want to kind of be stupid and stuff like that in our comment section, like I don't have a problem with it. And I've always been a kind of, just like, let them say whatever they want to say. I don't care. But some other people that listen to the program and that participate in the chat have reached out to me and said that it makes being part of the community a less enjoyable experience to be in a chat with people who are saying, kind of discriminatory things or being in bad faith or just being like just obnoxious and like just spamming random stuff. And so, I'm sympathetic to that, and I'm sympathetic to the idea that the value of cultivating a community around this project is more important than just letting people be dumb online. We're not a town square. It's not like we're Twitter. It's not like moderating our comment section is going to be something that like actually limits people's free speech. So, look, I put a chat up. Vote in the chat if you want. If you're like me, you can vote no. We shouldn't have moderators that limit stupid comments from pro-employer trolls. Or if you think we should. And we will, I'm not guaranteeing that we're going to do moderators after this, but it will inform our decision, and we'll take a look at that over the next week, and maybe we will. Maybe we won't, maybe we will. Okay, so here's a story that I wanted to talk about. The National Labor Relations Board is the body that is tasked with enforcing the National Labor Relations Act. The National Labor Relations Act covers all private sector workers, including workers at the U.S. Postal Service. All private sector workers, minus some small businesses and people who work on the rails. People who work on the rails are governed by the Railway Labor Act, but if you don't work on the rails, you don't work for a railroad or anything like that.
Or airline, remember?
Or airlines.
They're covered by
exactly.
that as well.
Or airlines. and you're in the private sector, then you are governed by the National Labor Relations Act. The agency tasked with enforcing the National Labor Relations Act is the National Labor Relations Board. Okay, so obviously the composition of the National Labor Relations Board is very important to seeing the competent enforcement of that law. You want to see people that are sympathetic to working people rather than employers at the head of that agency, because if you have people that are more sympathetic to employers, then they will maybe just not enforce the law. And we have seen that happen over the years. We have seen it happen that the rights that the American people have to form a union have been successively eroded by bad national labor relations boards. Okay, and so last week we saw, and under Trump's first administration, you can go back, Jacobin and the Economic Policy Institute and some other places have really good rundowns about how Trump's National Labor Relations Board in his first term undermined the rights of working people. It's a very, very important agency. We have in this country a right, an affirmative right to form a union. It is illegal for an employer to fire you for your union advocacy. Okay, but that right doesn't mean anything if it is not enforced. So if we do not have an agency that will enforce this right, then the right effectively does not exist. So that's why it is so troubling that last week Donald Trump removed Jennifer Abruzzo from the general counsel position of the National Labor Relations Board. The general counsel is the office within the National Labor Relations Board that is responsible for like picking cases to bring to the board to decide, right? And Jennifer Abruzzo is widely seen as being the most pro-worker general counsel of the NLRB in a very long time. She was ousted by Donald Trump last week. That was expected. That is his right to do under the National Labor Relations Act. Joe Biden did the same thing when he came in. He immediately removed Peter Robb, who was Trump's first general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board. Peter Robb, it's worth noting, was an architect of the firing of the Patco strikers under Ronald Reagan. Which, if you're a student of history, you'll know that PATCO is stands for the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, something like that. It was the Air Traffic Controllers Union. They went on strike under Ronald Reagan because the problems that we are seeing, and that almost certainly led to the crash that we saw last week. The problems that we are seeing today with the severe understaffing at the FAA began under Ronald Reagan. And so, that's a worthwhile thing to point out. But that was expected, that he was going to fire Jennifer Abruzzo, and Biden did the same thing. What was not expected was the firing of Gwen Wilcox. Gwen Wilcox was one of the board members of the National Labor Relations Board, a Biden appointee, pro-union person. She was legal counsel for the Communication Workers of America, if I recall correctly. This was not expected because it is explicitly forbidden by the National Labor Relations Act. Matt Brunig, a labor attorney, former attorney at the NLRB, and the person behind NLRB Edge, where he follows NLRB cases and stuff like that. He wrote a piece on his Substack about this, where he quotes Section 3A of the National Labor Relations Act that states that, quote, any member of the board may be removed by the president upon notice and hearing for neglect of duty or malfeasance in office, but for no other cause. But for no other cause. There is no indication in any Facebook is less important. All right, folks. Sorry about that. I had a bit of a technical difficulty. I think that OBS, I think that OBS crashed. Looks like they're hearing audio, but they're still on the standby screen on YouTube. Not sure. Okay, nope. Looks like okay. Sorry, we're back now. All right, sorry about that. Yeah. So, like I was saying, the it is explicitly illegal. It is against the law for Trump to fire Gwen Wilcox as a board member of the National Labor Relations Board, because the NLRA says that board members cannot be fired for any reason other than malfeasance or neglect of duty. I can still hear y'all talking there in the box. So no allegation that that's happened, and the email has been made public that was sent to Gwen Wilcox and Jennifer Abruzzo with their firing, saying, here's part of it. Oh, no, sorry. The email, here's part of it. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution vests the entire executive power in a single president who alone is accountable to the people. Pursuant to my constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, U.S. Constitution Article 2, Section 3, I must ensure that those who wield executive power on my behalf are held accountable. The aims and purposes of the administration with respect to the work on the board can be carried out most effectively with personnel of my own selection. To that end, effective of this date, Gwen Wilcox and Jennifer Abruzzo are hereby removed from their offices. And so Matt Brunig says that this move is consistent with the conservative legal theory that has become popular over the last couple of years. That theory, discussed in a prior NLRB Edge post, points to the language in Article 2 of the Constitution that requires that the president shall take care, blah, 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 and argues that the removal protections for NLRB members and administrative law judges are unconstitutional. That's also part of the case that Elon Musk and others have before the federal courts. So this is a very concerning development, and could very well spell the end of law enforcement of the NLRA in the United States, because now the NLRB does not have a quorum, so they cannot hear cases. Now, that doesn't mean that elections can't still happen, but anytime that something is appealed to the board, it cannot be decided. And so that puts all sorts of stuff in limbo, gives employers an easy way to stall cases, and it's just overall not good. And because, and you might be surprised by that if you were a baby brain and you believed that Trump cared about catering to unions and working people and making sure that our rights are protected. It's been very frustrating seeing some refusal to call this out by at least Sean O'Brien, who was asked about it on the Young Turks and somehow was able to maneuver that question into an answer that laid blame both on Democrats and Republicans, but primarily on Democrats. I mean, that was just a really bizarre kind of thing. And then he moved from there to praising Trump for nominating Lori Chavez DeRemer for Department of Labor. It was an absolutely insane reaction to the question, to this completely unprecedented unprecedented act by a president, and totally lacking from Sean O'Brien. Does not meet the moment. Does not meet the moment. So there you go. Have we got Jasmine in the Zoom now? Fantastic. Jasmine Payne-Patterson is a senior state policy strategist for the Economic Policy Institute, and she is here to talk to us about an agenda for a thriving South. Jasmine, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on Valley Labor Report. It's an honor. I was listening as you were speaking, and I come from a faith background, so part of me just wanted to give you some amens, some knots, some claps, all of it.
Well, I will say that I also come from a very charismatic faith background, no longer active in that sort of faith tradition, but I was raised in a Pentecostal type church, and so I'm sure that some of the rhetoric, some of the rhetorical flourishes come from somewhere. So
the roots.
Well, Jasmine, thanks again for coming on. First, for those who aren't familiar, could you just tell us a little bit about what is Economic Policy Institute? Who are y'all? What do y'all do? What's EARN? And what do you do there?
Yeah, well, thanks. Hey, Adam, good to see you. So EPI is Economic Policy Institute, and basically we are a progressive think tank. I think we like to call ourselves a think and do tank, and we're focused on how to make the economy better for workers. When we say that, we're talking about different policies, whether it be minimum wage, unemployment insurance, just different policies that affect workers and making sure that this economy is actually working for us. So a lot of times we like to think of ourselves as labor's think tank, and I think labor thinks of us as the same way. So while EPI as a whole organization focuses on the federal economy and different federal policy, EARN, which stands for the Economic Analysis and Research Network, a lot of acronyms today, I'm sorry about that, but EARN focuses on state policy, which we know now is more important than ever. So I work on the EARN team, and I'm focused on the South. I'm a senior state policy strategist there, so we're looking at how all of our Southern partners and how we can work together to make sure that we actually are building an economy that works for us as workers.
So we talked earlier in the show with Patricia Todd from Jobs to Move America about the Alabama legislative session, which starts Tuesday. Don't forget, those of you from Alabama, but also other states across the South are already in session right now. So it seemed like a good time to discuss the EARN in the South shared agenda. So could you tell us a little bit what is on this agenda and how could it help everyday people in the South?
So the agenda for a thriving South is the shared agenda that was comprised of our Southern partners. So we work with state partners like Alabama Rise, and kind of like the Alabama Rises in every state. So I'm in Georgia, so Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, North Carolina Justice Center, etc. All of the everything that you can say that's down south. So we're saying, okay, what policies are important for us, or maybe the top priorities for us to think about how we can make sure that our economy actually is working for us and making sure that we're supporting people. And even further into that, which policies do we think are actually movable? So the four policy areas that we came up with are unemployment insurance, minimum wage, paid leave, and childcare. And all of them kind of work together. And I will say, even though there's not an explicit one for labor, it's because labor is explicit in through it. It's implicit in how we have to rely on labor and work together to make sure these policies get passed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing I'm curious about is, all right, so childcare, minimum wage, paid leave, unemployment, why those issues? Why did those issues surface to the top, when you were having conversations with various folks? What was it about those four areas that really resonated with people?
Yeah, well, these are the bills that just kept coming up. Part of it was because of defensive attacks. So we saw these, and I'll start with the defensive and go into offensive. But there were all these copycat bills everywhere, popping up from different places. So it was just okay, how do we destroy the unemployment insurance system? So first it's through trying to tie the unemployment insurance, weeks of duration. So how many weeks you're able to receive unemployment insurance, the unemployment benefit. to the unemployment rate. So we know for many reasons that that's a bad idea. And if you are a worker, if you care about workers, if you care about people, then you understand that trying to tie the unemployment insurance weeks of duration to the unemployment rate is only going to hurt people. It's going to actually probably cause people to be out of the workforce even longer, because maybe they can't get childcare, maybe they don't have access to paid leave, and maybe those are the underlying reasons for why they need unemployment insurance right now and need to have unemployment insurance until they get to that place of a stable job. So that was one of the things. We saw lots of other attacks on unemployment insurance, from talking about UI trust fund. So the UI trust fund is what actually is like, just as you think of unemployment, well, if you think of insurance, more so like kind of like car insurance or something like that, like it's like a whole fund that we can pull into. So if you defund the unemployment insurance trust fund, then you can then have a case for denying claims and everything. It becomes less salient, and it becomes less effective. So that was another thing that we saw popping up in different places. And then even these guises to modernize unemployment insurance, and saying like, oh yeah, like we're gonna like try to modernize it because there's so much fraud, there's so much this, there's so much that. And then they would siphon the money away from the trust fund or the benefits to go towards this modernization. So that was a huge problem. We knew that we needed to do something to fix it. And this was popping up in Georgia, this is popping up in West Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. So we were like, let's figure out how we can work together to really say like, we're not going to accept this. This is not okay. So then relatedly, on the offensive side, there are moments of opportunity. So there's kind of this moment where like, oh yeah, I think that we can get more of these things passed. And also these things are so important. So I'll start with minimum wage, because it's just always been super important to me to think about how having a very strong wage floor is going to help everybody, because it'll increase the wages in the state, but also just thinking about how you need to set a boundary, like just even a limit of how people can be able to like take care of their families and take care of themselves. So when we think about minimum wage, I could go on and on, so I'm sorry Adam, if this is too much, just stop me whenever. But just to be sure, minimum wage was the federal minimum wage hasn't been changed since 2009. So we're talking about how we can look through in different states, and like there's so much I can say about this, like 86 years since it started, and how it's still only $7.25, and then Alabama doesn't even have a state minimum wage, and how you default to it. Lots of spirals there. So we'll come back to that. But just saying, like, we need to focus on this and make sure that we're boots on the ground, and like making sure we're pushing for higher minimum wages. And then it leads into paid leave. And as we're talking about paid leave, I'm talking about paid family leave and paid sick leave. And it's just thinking about like how it should just be a basic human right to be able to care for yourself and your family when you're sick. It's like, what a concept. We need to like take off time to care for a loved one, or to have a baby, or to take care of our elderly parents or ourselves. So, and then, why do we have to choose between our health or our family's health or our loved one's health and being able to pay our bills the next week or the next month? So just talking about that in that respect. And then finally, childcare. You can't get to work if you can't care for your children. You don't know if they're safe. So making sure that there's access to childcare, that it's safe, that it's culturally relevant, and also that the teachers are paid. So if you're thinking about like your own child, you want to make sure that the people who are taking care of your child every day are also able to take care of themselves. So that's kind of the way that we got to these 4 policies.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I mean, there was a lot you said that stood out. I mean, as you mentioned, the minimum wage has lagged for decades now and has not kept up with productivity. It certainly hasn't even kept up with inflation. And, childcare is something that I hear about a lot when I'm out in community. It is super expensive. It can be hard to find, especially that quality childcare, like you said, where folks are actually being paid a living wage because, often these facilities are not particularly regulated. There's often, not the standards that we would like to see when we're trusting our children with these folks. And then you're spending hundreds, if not, over $1,000 a month on childcare just to be able to get to work. Right. And these are issues that I think do resonate with a lot of people, regardless of who you voted for in November or if you even voted at all. Most of us are, impacted by these kind of issues. And the last one I'll touch on is the paid leave, because I know there's been some exciting progress happening around the country when it comes to paid leave. And in Alabama, there's, going to be a push to expand paid parental leave for state employees and educators. I think there was a similar bill in Mississippi recently. I guess catch us up there. How are we seeing progress in any of these areas in any states, during this very strange time that we're in?
Yeah. So even across the South, we're seeing some progress, and we need to see more. But there's some hope. So I'll touch on paid leave, and I'll say paid leave is especially important to me right now. I just got off of paid leave. I just had a baby girl, and I just was sitting here, and as I was going back to work, I took 12 weeks of leave, which there's no national paid leave program, for paid parental leave program. And a lot of times I saw this video and people were asking how many weeks do you think there is of paid leave, across the country? And people were like, maybe 8, maybe 16 or something like that. It's like, no, there's none. It's not a national program. And so it has to happen at the states as we try to continue to push for it at the federal level. But yes, Alabama did have a wonderful bill initially last year. It started off great. It was actually going to be the most progressive in the South. We were so excited. And we're going to have 12 weeks of paid leave, both for the birthing parent and the non-birthing parent. And we were like, okay, this is so good. This is so exciting. And we're going to be expanding this idea of what family is and loved ones, and just being able to really care for our children. And then it got dwindled down. And we got to the point, even across the South in many states, that 6 weeks sounds good. And it's just whoa, how did we get there? We're at 12, 12 already, just trying to imagine where you are at 12 weeks. Your child is only 3 months old. So imagine having even going back to work when your child is 3 months old, you're bringing this little bitty baby to childcare, to the daycare centers. So I'm thinking about that and thinking about how important it is. I do think that we need to continue to push for it, and we're seeing some progress on it, and we hope to see. I'm excited for this new bill in Alabama. I'm really hoping that we get it across the finish line this year. We were really close last year, and I was just rooting for you all here and trying to figure out how else we could jump in, because it's so important. But even at 6 weeks, just thinking of 6 weeks, if the birthing parent at that time is only being released from the doctor's immediate watch, and that's if you have a pregnancy without a lot of complications. So imagine going to work before that, or having to be without pay before that. You have to pay for diapers, you have to prepare to pay for childcare, all of those different things, and just trying to experience you're trying to bond with your child. And it's so important for both the mother's health and also the birthing parent's health and the child's health, to make sure that you actually have that time and you're able to do it safely and without fear of being evicted from your home or not being able to pay your electricity bill, because you need that for babies. They kind of like that stuff. So
Right.
yeah, you might need that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say, it's something that is so commonplace in other countries. I mean, the United States really stands out in not providing paid parental leave and paid family leave for folks.
Yep, absolutely. And it's something, I'm just gonna be honest, sinister about that. To not be able to take care of your family how you'd like to, or even yourself. We don't have we're looking at paid sick too, and there's protections to keep your job, but we lack that ability to for it to actually be paid so that you can make sure that you can keep your home, keep your car, keep all these other things that help you get back to work and for you to take care of your family. So it's a huge problem. And it kind of like goes hand in hand with childcare. For those who have children, it's just this important moment where you're just trying to figure out how you take care of your child. And yeah, I'll say like I've heard all of these things, these rumblings. I've seen data about childcare, but experiencing it myself, I'm just like, wow, this childcare is more expensive than my mortgage. So looking at that and just being like, wow, like, but I really want my child to have safe care. I want her to be taken care of and make sure that like when I get off work that like, I don't have to worry about, even while I'm at work, I don't have to worry that something bad is happening to her, but to know like, oh, she's taken care of. And that's just something that I feel like so many people can relate to. And just like, it's not too much to ask to want to make sure your family is safe and that you can pay for and afford this care, and that the teachers are also taken care of too. Like they're watching your baby. So of course you want them to be taken care of. And I could get into the minimum wage stuff as well, but I'll pause there just in case you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. And I think the minimum wage is a good place to wrap it up, and where we are seeing a push, from various states to actually increase the minimum wage and take action when the federal government hasn't.
Yeah. So a lot of states have minimum wage bills right now, but the places that we've really seen traction is when there's collective strength and worker power, like built up worker power. So when we think about the minimum wage, like it started in 1938, and like we're looking at this idea that it was like 25 cents in 1938, and it's only 7.25 now, like 86 years later. That's just so wild to me every time I think about it. And in Alabama, it's never been raised. It's never actually even kind of fully been adopted because Alabama doesn't have its own minimum wage. It kind of just relies on the federal minimum wage. And that's only because there's a federal law, the FLSA, that's saying you have to. So what would happen if that wasn't there? And so just to think, in 86 years, it's never been raised, it's never been touched in Alabama. But there's so much collective power when we see other states moving. So the states that it has been raised in the South is Florida, and it's because they have access to direct democracy. Within ballot measures and stuff, you see moments in other states where they also like Missouri, which was also able to raise their minimum wage because of ballot measures too. And we need to continue those pushes. Like the times when even the minimum wage was the highest at the federal level was 1968. Like it was effectively, even though the number is different, it was effectively like what it would be worth. Like today would be like $12.50. So that's the highest that it's been. And what's happening in 1968? You have a civil rights movement. You have people organizing together and making sure that they're building their collective power and pushing back. So in this moment, especially now, hearing everything that Jacob was saying earlier, we need to remember that. We need to remember that power that we have together, and to make sure we're binding together to make sure we're pushing back against policies that just don't make sense for us. So we definitely need to think about that. Even in Birmingham, you all had a higher minimum wage in Birmingham for a while that got preempted, which means that basically the state said, hey, no, you have to follow the state's guidance instead of having your own minimum wage as a city. So thinking that this really has to be something that we work together on and push back on, because there's power in our strength, and we can't ever forget that.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great place to wrap it up, because ultimately, that's what we preach on this show, is that we need mass engagement. We need mass involvement. Everyday people have to be involved in the political process, out in the community, organizing in the workplace, and, beyond the workplace. We need the kind of diverse people power that we had from the 30s through the 60s when, as you said, you pointed out, the civil rights movement, the labor movement, the women's movement. We had mass social movements pushing broad demands to make life better for everyday folks. And that's the kind of energy and power and strength and unity that we need moving forward. Jasmine, thank you so much for your time. Was there anything else you wanted to leave us with?
Thank you. I just want to say, just building off of what Jacob said earlier, this moment really is meant to divide us and to confuse us. But we have to remember, and I just feel like it's like particularly salient looking at this background here, that they buried us because they didn't know that we were seeds. So we really have to be the seeds right now, whether we're a mustard seed growing into a mountain or whatever. We have to be seeds and really like pop up and demand our demand for our neighbors, for ourselves, for our family, for our future families, and for generations to come, what we want our future to be. So whether it's signing on to the agenda for a thriving South, or getting involved in your local union, getting involved in any type of organizing to make sure that we're pushing together, because we can't afford not to. We absolutely can't. So thanks so much for the time and the space to talk about this, and thanks so much for everything that you all are doing on the show. I really appreciate you all.
Thanks again, Jasmine. We appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
All right, that was Jasmine Payne-Patterson, Senior State Policy Strategist for the Economic Policy Institute. You can learn more at epi.org. Let's talk about the union membership numbers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released their annual union membership survey last week, and the big news is that the union membership rate declined again for the third straight year, and continued the general trend since the 60s, since the 70s or so. And it declined this year into the single digits. 9.9% of all workers in the United States are members of unions today, down from 10.0% at the end of 2023. This is a huge indictment on, yes, the laws of this country and the broken labor laws and the broken enforcement, and the fact that even under the most pro-union presidential administration since FDR, it was still very easy for employers to flout the labor law. It will only be easier under the Trump administration, but it was still much more easy than it should have been. There were little to no real penalties, even when employers were found to have violated the law. This is a structural problem within the American economy, but it is also an indictment of the labor movement. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but I just want to go through some of the data, just some of the straight numbers for you. Like I said, 9.9%, down from 10.0% in 2023. The number of workers belonging to unions is now 14.3 million. What was the number in 2023? Do you know off the top of your head, Adam?
No, I don't. I don't remember right off the top of my head.
It doesn't say in the press release here. Oh, it says there were 14.4 million in 2023. So actually, even numerically,
that's what I thought, was there was a modest decline.
Yeah, so even a modest decline numerically in the absolute numbers of union members, even as there's a higher workforce. In 1983, the first year for which comparable data are available, the BLS says that the union membership rate was 20.1%, and there were 17.7 million union members. They go on to explain how it was compiled. These data on union memberships are collected as part of the Current Population Survey, a monthly sample survey of about 60,000 eligible households that obtains information on employment and unemployment among the nation's civilian non-institutional population age 16 and over. For further information, you can see the technical note in this release. And so obviously, it's a survey, it's scientific, but the numbers are not going to be exact. And so when you get to the state level data, I imagine that the rigor of the the state level data begins to decline, particularly as you have smaller states. And we can talk about that when we talk about Alabama. But some other highlights from the 2024 data: the union membership rate of public sector workers is 32.2%. It continues to be more than 5 times higher than the rate of private sector workers, which is 5.9%. The highest unionization rates were among workers in education, training, and library occupations and protective service occupations. In education, training, and library occupations, it's 32.3%, and protective service occupations, it's 29.6%. Men continue to have a higher union membership rate at 10.2% than women at 9.5%. Black workers remained more likely to be union members than white, Asian, and Hispanic workers. Non-union workers continued to have median weekly earnings that were less than the median weekly earnings of union members at $1,138 a week for non-union members and $1,337 a week for union members. Among states, Hawaii and New York had the highest union membership rates at 26.5% and 20.6% respectively, while the lowest rates were in North Carolina, 2.4%, and South Dakota, 2.7%, and South Carolina, 2.8%. So those are some of the bigger highlights from the national data. I'll also point out a couple of things from the state level data. In Alabama, the union membership rate declined for the first time since the pandemic. It has been steadily rising over the last few years. In 2023, the union membership rate was 7.5%, with 8.6% being represented by unions, 7.5% being members of their unions, and 156,000 total members. Last year in 2024, that rate dropped from the percentage of members being 6.6% of workers and a percent of people represented by unions being 7.8%. The number also dropped significantly, down from 156,000 to 140,000. Other states obviously saw, declines, but since it is so close, even though the move from 10.0% to 9.9% is huge, kind of like as a milestone, like this is the first time since we've been collecting data that a single-digit amount of people in the U.S. are union members. It's huge kind of as a milestone, but ultimately the number is not that different. And so you're going to have states are going to be really across the board. Some of them are increasing and some of them are decreasing in their union membership rates. For example, in D.C., the union membership rate increased significantly from 9.1% to 10.6%. That's a huge increase in 1 year, and the absolute number increased as well from 32,000 union members to 38,000 union members. In Florida, and this is probably one of the most surprising things to me, in Florida, the union membership rate increased from 4.7% to 5.1%. 442,000 union members to 462,000 union members. And it's surprising to me because of the assault on public sector unions in the state of Florida. McKenna Schuler says that she has tracked some 50,000 public sector workers in the state of Florida that have lost their union membership. Although you can see in the state of Florida, the percent of employees represented by unions, even as the number of union members increased, the number of people represented by unions did decrease. In 2023, it was 578,000 people represented by unions, and in 2024, only 569,000 people represented by unions. So that's interesting dynamics there. I wonder where the new union members are coming from. And that, that reminds me that like the union membership rate in Alabama also increased pretty significantly 1 year. I think it was by like 20 or 30,000 union members. And that's why I'm so suspicious of some of the state level data. I think by the time that you aggregate all of the, the national, I think that I imagine that it's pretty close, but especially for a state, as small as Alabama, Alabama is only a very, very small percent of the U.S. population. And so, the idea that you could have pretty wide variations in data doesn't strike me as too difficult to believe, because supposedly, according to this data, Alabama gained 20 to 30,000 union members in 1 year, and last year we lost 16,000 union members. But I am, obviously I do this radio program. I do Last Week in Southern Labor. We track elections very closely. We have contacts all over the South in the union, in the labor movement, and I have neither seen anything to indicate such a big thing as 20,000 new union members from 2022 to 2023, nor anything so big as to indicate 16,000 less union members from 2023 to 2024. So, I kind of take the state data with a grain of salt. But if anybody does stats and you can explain why I should put more faith in the state level data, you can let me know. So there you go. But it is absolutely an indictment on the labor movement. And I don't see how we can take this as anything but that. Hamilton Nolan has a piece on his Substack called "Confirmed Unions Squandered the Biden Years." And he basically lays out how, the theory of change at the national level within the labor movement has been, we cannot grow by any significant measure without friends in the government. And now it's true that it's obviously been easier to grow when we have had people that are friendly within the government. I mean, FDR, National Labor Relations Act, union membership exploded after that. But, that's been kind of the theory of change. We need to change labor law and we need a friendly president. And it's difficult to say that it's difficult to say that this theory was not tested with the Biden administration. Hamilton Nolan points out that unions collectively spent hundreds of millions of dollars and ran massive door-knocking campaigns across the nation to help Joe Biden win. He got the near unanimous support of organized labor. And after he won, he spent unprecedented amounts of political capital on union priorities, at least since LBJ or FDR. And he talks about how he gave union leaders unprecedented access to the White House. He walked a picket line. He appointed extremely pro-union officials to regulatory agencies, and in general did more to cater to interests of unions than any president since the post-World War II era. And so, he says, that Biden's presidency represented the pinnacle of the theory of power that has guided most big national unions for the last several decades. And we continue to lose density. We continue to lose members. We just lived through 4 years of the fruits of this approach, Nolan says, and now we can evaluate it for what it's worth. He says that, of course, Biden was infinitely better for unions and workers than the alternative scenario of Trump winning in 2020. That's common sense. It's a question not even worth dwelling on. But the question is not, he says, should unions support Republicans or Democrats? The question is, has achieving electoral political power translated into the growth of union power? Have the dollars spent on politics rather than union organizing paid off? Does organized labor have its priorities straight? Hamilton says today we can definitively say the answer is no, and I agree. How can we answer otherwise? How can we answer otherwise when after we've had 4 years of, Biden says, the most pro-union administration in history? Of course, that's silly, but it is the most pro-union administration since at least LBJ. And basically, as far as union power is concerned, nothing. We got nothing. And so how must we go forward as a labor movement? I think the obvious answer is that we need a reconfiguration of our priorities. We need to utilize some of the funds, and it's important to point out that union dues are not spent on politics. That is spent by unions have separate PACs that members can donate to if they want. But we should utilize those political dollars to advance independent expenditures and even to advance organizing efforts, because we have seen that getting electoral power at the highest office in the land has not helped us build union power. And that's what we need. We need union power. We need to build the power of the working class. And we don't do that by just electing this person or that person. We do that by organizing more workers. And so that is going to be the task. That is going to be the task over the next several years. Adam, do you want to say anything else before we start talking about the NALC?
Well, I know, yeah, we got Mike on the line, so I'll keep it brief and just say that, you know, I agree. I think when you look at your numbers and they continue to shrink year after year after year after year after year after year, you have to ask, what are we doing wrong? What are we not doing right? What can we change? What can we do different? And I hope those questions are being asked by people in any kind of leadership, from the local up to the international. And I hope that rank and file members are asking that question, because ultimately it's going to be up to all of us to fix this problem, because 9.9% just ain't cutting it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get the respect and power we need, the strength that we need to win better lives for ourselves and our families and our communities with those kind of numbers. We have to organize more workers. We have to have more workers involved in organizing more workers. We have to hire more organizers. We have to invest in real big campaigns and even small campaigns. We have to organize small shops, big shops. I mean, everything in between. We have to really get out there and build momentum in organizing new workplaces and growing membership where we already have some organization. You know, I think, yeah, it's a big problem. Everyone should be looking at these numbers and asking real tough questions about what we've been doing, what's not working, how do we break through the siege? Because we've been under siege for decades now. The working class broadly in America, we've been getting our butt kicked for decades, and the unions in particular, we really have, and it's continued to decline. We cannot afford to continue this decline. You know, as I told you yesterday when we talked about this, you know, I wonder, my daughter has 9 more years until she can graduate high school and go on to be an adult in the workforce. At this rate, what kind of union movement will we have for her? Right? With this continued decline, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And I do know that obviously there are a lot of unions who are investing big in organizing and have announced, you know, really significant investments in the last year or so. And I hope that that's going to make a big progress and a big difference. You know, I'm excited by some of the work that UAW has been doing in the auto industry. You know, there's other unions that have been really trying to spread. I'm you know, proud of IATSE for trying to break into the video game industry, proud of CWA for doing that as well, breaking into nonprofits, other sectors, you know, Starbucks Workers United, REI, Costco, some of these other, you know, retail giants where we need to see unions. But frankly, we have to be asking ourselves, why can't any job we encounter, why can't it be a good union job? Doesn't matter, right? Cooks, cashiers, clerks, construction, lawn care, maintenance, whatever people do for a living, if they're making some value, which clearly they are, they wouldn't be paid for it, why not have representation, right? Unions are democracies. Unions are tools for us as working people to come together, pool our strengths and our talents together, and coordinate and collaborate so that we can get a better deal out of this whole economy. And you know, this decline has had a real impact on our power. And if you're listening and you're not a union member and you're wondering, well, why does this have anything to do with me? It's because as we've seen the union membership decline over the last 5 decades, in particular, we've seen inequality skyrocket. As workers have less and less unions, the bosses and the owners gain more and more of the wealth, right? Wages have not kept up with productivity. Wages have not kept up with inflation. By and large, working class people, the majority of us, the vast majority of us, working class people are worse off now than we were 50 years ago. And the decline in union power is a direct factor there. That is a direct factor. The decline in union power, the decline in our bargaining power as working people to come together and get a better deal. And that's what we have to address. So yeah, appreciate it. And we're going to keep that conversation going. And I would love to get folks to call in, throughout the week and give us your thoughts about these numbers and your ideas about what do we do moving forward.
Absolutely. And I did see in the chat, Vonda McDaniel, president of the Nashville Labor Council, said, disagree with you and Nolan. Job growth is exceeding union organizing. We have to do both. I love and respect Vonda McDaniel. I think of her as something of a mentor for me in my role in the North Alabama Labor Council, and I agree that we have to do both. I think the question is just, what is the priority? And I will say, though, that as on absolute numbers, membership, according to the BLS, did decline from 14.4 million members in 2023 to 14.3 million members in 2024. So, but nevertheless, we all got to do better. I think that, and we need to do better. We all got to do better. But I do think there's a question of priorities there. The National Association of Letter Carriers reached a tentative agreement with the U.S. Postal Service several weeks back. They sent the agreement out to city carriers across the country, and the results of the vote were announced late yesterday afternoon, 5 p.m. Central, showing that membership overwhelmingly rejected the tentative collective bargaining agreement. Here's a statement from the NALC. The active membership of the National Association of Letter Carriers has voted to reject the ratification of the tentative 2023-2026 national agreement with the U.S. Postal Service. The vote to ratify was 63,680 to reject the agreement versus 26,304 to accept it, as reported by the NALC's ballot committee chairman Paul Rosnowski of Royal Oak, Michigan, branch 3126. The 15-member ballot committee monitored and observed the dispatch, receipt, and tabulation of the ratification ballot conducted by independent companies Mosaic of Cheverly, Maryland, and Survey and Ballot Systems of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. NALC President Brian Renfro issued this statement. NALC has notified the Postal Service of the result of the ratification balloting and our intent to reopen negotiations within 5 days in accordance with Article 16 of the NALC Constitution. Negotiations will not exceed a period of 15 days from when they are reopened. The NALC Executive Council will meet to discuss whether to send a second ballot to each member for ratification or rejection of a potential new tentative agreement, or to proceed to binding interest arbitration. Under the law, decisions of that arbitration board would be final and binding upon the parties. In a Democratic vote, the will of NALC's membership has been made clear. The tentative agreement that represented the best offer the Postal Service put on the table is not enough for America's city letter carriers. We have earned more and we deserve more. Again, this is NALC President Brian Renfro. He continues, we will negotiate in good faith with the Postal Service at the bargaining table during the limited time frame set forth in the NALC Constitution. We call on the Postal Service to do the same. As I made clear since the beginning of this process, NALC is well prepared to fight like hell for a better contract in interest arbitration, and that is exactly what we will do if the Postal Service is unwilling to reach agreement on terms that fairly compensate and reward our members. Build a Fighting NALC is a reform movement within the National Association of Letter Carriers. They also put out a statement on the contract. They said members of the National Association of Letter Carriers rejected the sellout national agreement with a turnout of 48%, compared to a turnout of only 63,000 votes total for the previous contract. This result is a victory for our union and a rejection of the current national leadership and its approach. Hundreds of letter carriers joined Build a Fighting NALC in organizing the first real Vote No campaign in NALC since 1978, working alongside other forces in the reform movement like Concerned Letter Carriers and Caref for President to build the campaign. We organized parking lot meetings and rallies to discuss the TA, organized Vote No group photos in stations and parking lots, and passed Vote No recommendation resolutions at general membership meetings in 55 branches across the country, including Branch 9 Minneapolis, Branch 41 Brooklyn, Staten Island, Branch 79 Seattle, Branch 34 Boston, and many more. It was this organizing at the station and branch level that pushed the no vote across the finish line. I won't read the entire thing, but they say several branches across the country, including Branch 9 in Minneapolis and Branch 1100 in Los Angeles, will be holding contract rallies in the 15-day window where NALC and USPS can renegotiate the contract. We have no illusions that we can rely alone on having a strong case in arbitration. We need to publicly demand a strong contract. Our strength is our 290,000 members and our millions of supporters across the country. We need to demonstrate that strength, and for this reason, BFN demands NALC national leadership joins with these branches and calls for national contract rallies as we head into arbitration to win over the general public to our side and to show the arbitrator why we voted no and what we demand. Here to talk to us about the rejection of the tentative agreement is National Business Agent for Region 3 of the National Association of Letter Carriers, Mike Caref, also a candidate for president in the 2026 elections of the NALC. I will note for the record, the Valley Labor Report is not endorsing any candidate, and over the course of the campaign, any candidate is welcome to come on the show at one point or another, but we are not talking about the campaign at this time. We are simply talking about the contract rejection. Mike Caref, welcome to the program. I don't hear Caref.
You don't hear me? Wow.
Okay. Now I hear you. Okay. Welcome to the program, Mike. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, good afternoon again.
Yes. Good afternoon. Great to hear from you. So what are your initial reactions to the results of the vote?
Man, we're overjoyed just because when we first, you could go back to the pandemic, really. We worked through the pandemic. We didn't miss a day of work. It was very scary for letter carriers. There was a lot of talk of hazard pay. Some other workers did get hazard pay. We didn't. We had a collective bargaining agreement. And we just kind of we're out there, we're working. And when the contract expired, we started negotiations February 22nd of 2023, almost 2 years ago, on a new contract. And so we get into the end of the contract, which was, 90 days later, May 20th, 2023, and there's no agreement. And, at that point, we had the right to go to arbitration. And mind you, we won the right to go to arbitration. We went out on strike in 1970. When the carriers went on a strike at that time, they changed everything. They changed the law. It went from the U.S. Post Office to United States Postal Service. We had real collective bargaining, negotiating directly with the employer for a contract. And what the law said is that if we didn't come to terms with the Postal Service, that we had the right to take our case to a neutral arbitrator. Really, it's a tri-party arbitration panel consisting of one person from the NALC, one person from the Postal Service, and then a neutral arbitrator. And we had that right, and the arbitrator would make their determination, or the panel would make their determination based on the comparability standard, comparable in pay and benefits to those in the private sector of the economy of the United States. And it clarified that it would be a career job. And so we had this kind of leverage, and we saw what was going on. That was when UAW was doing a lot, when the Teamsters were doing a lot with the United Parcel Service. And we saw all this going on, and it was like, okay, now is our turn. Now is our turn to get rewarded for the work we did through the pandemic and just, the daily grind. So the job had gotten a lot harder over the last few years. We've gone through this period where we're on the street a lot more. We're being harassed a lot more by the supervisors. They have GPS on our scanners now, and they know what we're doing at all times. And they're constantly questioning us about every single minute of every single day. Like I said, we're out on the street for a longer period than we've ever been. The job is very physical, as well as, you know, dealing with the public, being the face of the Postal Service. A lot of little things like our uniform costs have been going up greatly. So we're really looking for this contract to kind of solve this problem, to right size the situation, to make it, you know, so that the job that we once knew, which was a great job, which put us solidly in the middle class, which was a dignified job, a job you could be proud of, a job you pass on to your kids and your kids' kids. You know, that job in service of the American people had just been deteriorating. And we thought that the contract needed to right that. And so at the end of that, at May 20th of 2023, we didn't have agreement with our employer, the United States Postal Service. We didn't go to arbitration. And the president of the union, who oversees the collective bargaining process, was continuing negotiating. And we don't, you know, it was secret negotiations. And the Building a Fighting NALC, who you quoted, you know, really came out and said, why do we have these secret negotiations? And they're absolutely right. You know, why is it not transparent? Why do the members of the union not know what is being negotiated on our behalf? This is our contract. It's our livelihood, you know? But that was not the president's strategy. He said, no, I'm having these negotiations with the Postal Service. And those went on from May of 2023. I mean, the negotiations had started in February, but they were ongoing. We did not go to arbitration, despite the president telling us, hey, we have an arbitrator picked out, a neutral arbitrator. Okay, are we going to have hearings? You know, no, we're still talking. We're gonna see if we come up with a deal. And it went all the way until October the 18th of 2024, like 500, 600 days, 20 months of negotiating. And, you know, every carrier is like, okay, well, I was a little different, but a lot of carriers had optimism. You know, they're like, if it's taking this damn long, it must be pretty good. You know, we must be getting, you know, whatever. And when we saw the terms, we're like, this is a slap in the face. You know, not only did it continue the non-career classification of CCAs, city carrier assistants, which has, you know, really decimated the craft. Quality workers don't want the job, and people are leaving the job in droves. It's not really a career job anymore. And the non-career job, it really sucks. I mean, even when you become career, it takes way too long to get to the top of the pay scale, and there's a lot of other issues in there. But, you know, the non-career job is just like a non-starter in today's economy and what we're dealing with as far as what the job has become. And so that there was no change whatsoever in the non-career classification, not even a reduction in the time. So right now the rules are that you can spend no more than 2 years as a non-career CCA, and then they have to convert you. If there's a vacancy in that post office, you know, they'll convert you prior to the 2 years, but with or without a vacancy, it'll be 2 years. And, you know, we won that in the last contract. And so we're looking for some improvement on that. We're looking for some improvement in the pay, which is, you know, in 2012, the last time we had a non-career workforce, which was known as transitional employees, those carriers were starting at $22.15 an hour back then in 2012. So in today's wages, you know, that's like $29, $30 an hour if you adjust for inflation. And the terms of this tentative agreement had CCA still making $20 an hour. And even at the end of the contract, it would be like $21 an hour at the most. And we're like, no, you know, no way. But you don't know what everyone's feeling. And, you know, so a lot of the branches, you know, including my branch and a lot of other branches, were very active in mobilizing the membership. There was a lot of rallies. We had a lot of rallies on Columbus Day, the Indigenous Peoples Day in October, all around the country. And we had a lot of motions in local branches to support a no vote, to endorse a no vote, encourage the membership to vote no on the contract. And you know, you think, okay, this is the will of the carriers, but you just don't know. I mean, you know, the president of the NALC spent a lot of our money and resources and time, you know, trying to sell this thing. And his selling point was, this is the best we're going to get from the Postal Service. And, you know, as you see the results finally come in yesterday, it's like the best they can offer is not good enough for us. They're going to have to do better. And if they're not willing to do better, then we're going to have to force this thing in front of a neutral arbitrator to get some better terms.
I would just say I'll mention this, and this is something that I've thought a lot, but the language about the compensation of the postal workers and letter carriers, as you mentioned, is there's some language about like it should be comparable to pay in the private industry, and that's all. That language has always been kind of used to justify like, oh, they make 85% of what they would in the private sector or whatever, but you could also be comparable while being paid more, right? I mean, you could
Right.
theoretically have a postal service where postal workers and letter carriers make 115% of what they would make at UPS or somewhere else, right? I mean, there's no reason that you should have to make less than you would if you worked in the private sector. And in fact, I think that there's a strong case that it should be higher, for one, because it's the government, and the government should be like an ideal employer. We should be, as a people, as a public, kind of putting out what we want, as like a guide for other people. We should be a high road employer, but also because we as a government have an interest in attracting the best talent. And it's going to be difficult to get the best people for the job if you don't pay as much as other people, right? I mean, has that argument ever been pursued? Like, yes, we should be paid comparable to the private sector, so we should be paid 110% or 115% of what they make at UPS instead of 85%. Has that ever even been like argued?
The arbitration hearings that have taken place. So we started the collective bargaining process in 1970, and I think we went to arbitration about 6 times since then. But there's not there's not a live stream or, a transcript, or so I don't know exactly what's been argued. I sat in on the last arbitration that we had. We ended up coming to agreement with the Postal Service, but they had hearings for like 3 months in late 2020. And then we ended up coming to agreement, I think, in December of 2020, and we ratified that contract in 2021. And by the way, we ratified that contract with 96% approval of the contract. So when you talk about the effort that it required to move that thing in the direction of the membership voting no and voting no overwhelmingly, there's a sea change out there. There's a sea change that apparently, the president of the NALC is kind of not aware of. But, what was once acceptable is no longer acceptable. And so there's a change. But to your point, UPS drivers are making now $45 an hour top. And once they become a driver, which it's hard to start as a driver in their contract. Sometimes you have to start in the warehouse job and part-time work and stuff like that. But once you become a driver, it's 4 years till you get to the $45. We are currently at $36, $37 an hour top. And even with the, raises and stuff like that in the tentative agreement, even we would only get to like $41, $42 an hour in 2026, in November of 2026. And by then, in 2027, I guess, the UPS drivers will be at $49 an hour top. And then, of course, you look at benefits, and what we have very good is we have a good leave program, very generous, I would say, or, very quality leave program. And we have a quality retirement program. But some of the other stuff is not as good as what the UPS drivers are getting. So, you kind of look at comparability. It doesn't specifically say comparability to a similar job, although it's kind of, you interpret the law and you say, I think that's what they kind of meant. But it just says comparable to the pay and benefits in the private sector of the United States, the economy of the United States. And so, you could make a good argument that it should be more because of the requirements of the job. There's legal requirements. Everyone has to pass what they call a NALC background check, because you're handling people's mail. You're handling sensitive information. We're the face of the federal government in the community at least 6 days a week, every home and business in America. Not to mention the fact that it's a physical job, not to mention the fact that the job has become a lot more dangerous. We're being stuck up at gunpoint. We carry things of value. The keys that we carry are valuable to some people. The checks and the credit cards and the packages are valuable to people. And we're out there, and we feel like, I mean, that's one thing that's, you talk about the disrespect on the job. The post office has postal police, and they only put the postal police inside to protect the real property of the postal service, and us, the humans that are out there on the street, we get no protection whatsoever. The police don't come out there and protect us, even as a deterrent, even driving around, even anything like that. There's neighborhoods in the city of Chicago where I'm from. Amazon will come drop the packages at the post office because they're not going to go out there and make those deliveries in those neighborhoods. But the Postal Service is universal service. We deliver to everyone, everywhere. So there should be a premium associated with that. We saw that during the pandemic. It's like, you're essential. People need their medicines. People need to be able to vote. And so we're going to deliver the ballots. People, even when we deliver the masks, or we could deliver vaccines or whatever, anything that has to get to the people, that's an essential thing that's necessary. You have a network of people, and the Postal Service as a whole is a network, but we, the nation's letter carriers, are the ones that are out there performing that job. And so to make the argument that there should be a premium associated with that shouldn't be a hard argument to make at all. But this tentative agreement, I mean, there was so much fuzzy math going on, and playing with the numbers and making it seem like it was better than what it was, and it was like, it just was subpar. It was subpar.
So it seems like from the statement that I read from the NALC and Brian Renfro that things are going to be moving pretty quickly now. He said that negotiations will begin within 5 calendar days of the results being announced, and negotiations will conclude no more than 15 calendar days from when the negotiations begin. So walk us through exactly what that means, what are the next steps, and what are the timelines for the union, and then we'll talk after that answer about the next steps for letter carriers and how letter carriers can build support for a strong contract.
Yeah, so this thing is, so there's a 15-day limit in the Constitution of the NALC. So basically, we informed the Postal Service, the members rejected this tentative agreement that we had with you, and therefore we want to reopen negotiations. And the Postal Service agreed. They said, okay, we'll reopen negotiations. And the Constitution caps that at 15 days. And then after that, you could call for a work stoppage, but the president of the NLC is not going to do that. I'm not even saying that would be that would be advantageous. But what we're going to do after that is go to the arbitration process. We're not sure what that time frame is going to look like. One of the things is, obviously, we're going to get raises, and those raises are going to go back to the expiration of the contract. So we're currently working under the terms of the old contract that expired May 20th, 2023. So any raises we get in this new contract, they're going to be retroactive to that time, which means that, back pay is going to be associated with the new contract. Whenever they implement the new terms, they're going to owe us money. One of the problems is we have people that have quit the job, and, people that have retired, and, so doing that back pay is going to be complicated. But also, we feel like we're entitled to interest on the back pay because the post office has been holding on to our money for these last 2 years, and interest rates are pretty high nowadays. So we have an interest in moving this thing along pretty quickly, but the Postal Service has the opposite interest. They have an interest in just kind of delaying the thing further. So we really are monitoring that situation and really encouraging our president, who heads up the negotiating process, to move this thing along as quickly as possible. Let's get this in front of an arbitrator. We're not very optimistic that the Postal Service, we negotiated with them for 600 days. Do you really think an additional 15 days is going to, substantially get us a higher offer or a better deal or something that would be acceptable to us? But maybe it will. The president has indicated he's going to give a good faith effort, and that's the right move. That's absolutely what we should be doing. But 15 days is plenty. We'll see what they come up with. If it's something that we feel is worthy of, going back to the membership for another vote, that's a possibility. We could get a new offer from the Postal Service and come back to the membership and say, okay, how about this as a tentative agreement? And we would vote again. Hopefully the vote won't take that long. The voting process took forever. That's another problem we have, is the mail standards are deteriorating. And it took forever for people to get their ballots and return them in a mail ballot election. And we're the damn National Association of Letter Carriers. So, that's
Right.
something that we really have to address. But that's something that everyone in America is dealing with. The slowing down of the mail, is it on purpose? That kind of thing. So that's really the next frontier after we secure a solid contract. The next thing is going to be dealing with the inefficiencies in the Postal Service and the gross mismanagement of the Postal Service. But we'll get to that, kind of next. Right now, we got to make sure that we have a contract where people are going to actually want this job. And so we think that's going to be through arbitration. And we're going to try to do it as fast as possible. But there's no guarantee. The parties at one time, like a year ago, had agreed to a neutral arbitrator. So I was saying the panel is one person from the NALC, one from the Postal Service, and then you have a neutral arbitrator. So we had agreed that Dennis Nolan would be the neutral arbitrator. But I don't know where that's at now. Is Dennis Nolan still going to be the neutral arbitrator? If so, does he have dates available? When are these hearings going to start? Are these hearings going to be accessible to the membership of the union? It's our contract. So there's still a lot of questions about this whole process. But the first thing is the 15 days. And then the president has indicated that we will reconvene as an executive council. I'm on the executive council of the NELC. There's 28 of us around the country that are on the executive council. And he's told us that we're going to reconvene after the 15 days to figure out our next steps from there.
You're not going to be reconvening before the 15 days to inform bargaining strategy for these 15 days?
No.
Okay.
The Constitution of the NALC puts all the power in the hands of the president to come up with the bargaining strategy, and he relies on staff and people that he thinks are most qualified to help him out in that process. And that's up to us to say when we have our elections every 4 years, whether we trust that person or if we want to go in a different direction. So he's our president right now, and he's going to go forth with the process and the procedures that he feels are best for the union.
We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. Mike, you're welcome to stay on and take calls from letter carriers if you'd like. I don't know if you have time. We normally wrap the show up at 12:30, but just because this is such a big deal, we're going to go for at least 20 to 30 minutes extra. We want to try to take a few quick calls. If you call in, please do be mindful of the fact that there's a lot of people that do want to get their thoughts in. So keep your calls to no more than 120 seconds, no more than 2 minutes, please. But 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. We'll go ahead and open those lines. We got a couple more questions from Mike, though, before we take calls. So we talked about the timeline for the union and what the timeline is for the union, the 5 days and the 15 days. What are the next steps for letter carriers themselves? What can letter carriers be doing over the next 20 calendar days? I mean, this is a pretty quick turnaround. What can letter carriers be doing over the next 20 calendar days and beyond to build support and build a public case for a better contract?
Yeah, so, as you and I discussed, one thing that we're going to be planning, and I know there's, a lot of different organizations within the NELC and people are doing different things and there's no right answer or whatever. But one thing that we planned, through our campaign, through Caref for Prez campaign, is a March on Washington. And the reason for the March on Washington is to get us together, to make sure that both sides, the NELC and the Postal Service, who are, have their headquarters in Washington, D.C., that make sure both sides know what we expect out of a contract. And then the second thing is to build support amongst the public. Having a strong Postal Service that delivers everything and anything for free. You pay for postage, but the delivery is free to every home and business in America at least 6 days a week is a great service. And that universal service that everyone has come to expect from a professional letter carrier. You pay us well, you treat us well, you're going to get the best possible service out there. And right now, we can't even afford our uniforms right now. The dignity of the job. The Postal Service has all this damn money to spend on supervisors and people to harass us all day, but they do not have any money, apparently, to pay us a living wage, at least to start off with, and to make sure we're in proper uniform and things like that. So we think that our fight is everyone's fight. and having a strong labor movement is good for everyone. We have 300,000 members around the country, and we want everyone to help and participate in this. So we plan a march on Washington for March the 23rd. We just need some time to get it together, but we encourage all NALC branches and any other union, labor group. Our brothers and sisters in the American Postal Workers Union are working without a contract under the terms of the previous contract as well. Hopefully they'll join us. Hopefully the National Association of Letter Carriers itself, our union, will endorse and support this march. So what we plan to do is come to Washington. Ironically enough, between NELC headquarters and USPS headquarters, is that march is exactly 1.3 miles, which is 1.3 is the amount of the raises that were in the tentative agreement. That
Right.
It's like a curse word. 1.3. We're only worth 1.3%. What is this? So that is just an ironic thing. But that's just we're planning that march. And the second thing we're going to do is we've already put out kind of like a survey, and it's something where you can go in. It's a digital survey, and it says, here's my name, here's my branch number. Dear President Renfro of the NELC, dear Postmaster General DeJoy, here's the reasons why I voted no, and I want you to know what they are. And we're going to take all of those, and we're going to put them into a letter format, and we're going to deliver them on that day. On March 23rd, we're going to deliver them. We're going to deliver them to NELC headquarters. We're going to deliver them to USPS headquarters. And like I said, make sure that you mentioned like a 15-day window. I think this thing is going to go on for a while. I think it's unlikely it'll be resolved in the next couple of weeks or even in the next month or two. And as it goes on, we have to stay in the fight. We have to keep rallying. We have to make sure that we're getting the public on our side, other union members and other unions, and just get everyone together to, like I say, fight for a strong postal service and a good, solid middle class job for our nation's letter carriers. I think that's in everyone's best interest. So we're gonna bring that fight forward.
Most federal workers that are under the GS pay schedule have, territorial cost of living adjustments. And that's something that I've heard a few times in the chat over the course of our contract coverage, that the only places in the United States that have a territorial, I don't know exactly the word for it, but a differential in pay is Alaska and Hawaii, and everybody else working under the NALC contract across the country gets paid exactly the same. So you work, in the ruralist of rural Alabama, you get paid the same as somebody in New York City. Do you think that the new contract should include a territorial cost of living adjustment?
Well, I will answer that with a no, but let me kind of explain. The reason why it has to be a no is because our bargaining strategies are set by our delegates to the convention. The convention delegates are the supreme body in our union and the National Association of Letter Carriers. And we meet every 2 years, and there's thousands of letter carriers that come, delegates from every branch all over the country. And this comes up constantly, right? And it came up last time we had the convention in Boston in 2024. And we voted it down. I mean, it was a close vote, actually. But we voted it down. So the bargaining strategy is that we're going to negotiate a national wage. Now, there's a territorial COLA in Alaska and Hawaii, and that's per the law, but it's not per our contract. So our contract says every letter carrier is going to make the same amount. But all that means to me, and I did a stop in Boston, branch 34, Boston, Massachusetts, and that's a big deal for them. In some of the other high cost of living areas like San Francisco, New York City, Washington, D.C., the Florida Keys, this is a very big issue where, it's poverty wages compared to what may be decent wages someplace else. But, all that means is that if you're going to have a national contract and you're going to have the same wage for every single letter carrier, that wage better be high enough for all of our brothers and sisters to live a decent life. I mean, we're negotiating a good contract. And if it's a bad contract for our brothers and sisters in Boston, then it's a bad contract for all of us. And that's the way I feel about it. And that's why these terms and this 1.3% and this, what they call diet colas, which is a cost of living allowance that's not applied across the board for everyone. These type of things, they got to go. They cannot be part of our contract anymore.
Yeah,
and then
I think that
if we get to the next convention and the
And people
delegates
vote
to
a
the
different
convention
way,
want us
yeah.
to negotiate that, then by all means, the president of the union would take that forward.
No, I think that makes sense, and I think I think I had forgotten about that, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember that came up, and if the convention voted against it, I mean, I think that you're, I mean, more or less, I mean, obviously, I don't think it would be illegal to pursue a different bargaining strategy, but I think that you would be morally obligated to follow the will of the convention there. So I think that's a good answer. Finally, and then we'll bring on a call. There's been some talks about privatization of the Postal Service. There's been some discussion of that, and I saw that there was a resolution introduced in the U.S. House, basically opposing any efforts to privatize the Postal Service. Do you have any reaction to the talks of privatization?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to support that resolution. It's just kind of a general resolution. But I will say there's a caveat to that. We're not in favor of anything that would deteriorate the Postal Service, the United States Postal Service, the Universal Service Mandate, that kind of thing. But we do have a management problem. And the current structure that was laid out in the Postal Reorganization Act of 1970, they had postal reform was amended in 2022. We may need to look at that structure. And maybe it's just an internal thing where we got to have some more serious discussions with the Board of Governors and the people that kind of oversee the Postal Service. But this management that is currently in place with the Postal Service, they're horrible. They're horrible for the employees. They're horrible for the customers. They don't really care about the service to the people. The service standards have gotten worse, and they're not even maintaining those service standards that are on paper. So there is something to be said to the point of, why are these people in charge? You gotta deliver for the American people, and we would definitely like to work with the current management of the Postal Service to make it more efficient. We can get rid of half of these supervisors tomorrow, and we still get the job done, and we get it done better, without them, and that's going to save them a lot of money, and that's going to save the ratepayers who pay postage a lot of money. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do, but if postal management is going to dig in the way they've been digging in, and say we're just going to keep doing the things the way we've been doing it, then there's got to be a change there. So, but we're going to support the anti-privatization movement that has been introduced into the Congress. Yes.
Mike Caref is National Business Agent for Region 3 of the National Association of Letter Carriers. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Do you have time to stay on and take calls with us, or do you want to go ahead and roll out?
I'm here at my kid is in Saturday school.
No, yeah.
I'm waiting for her to come out the door, but she hasn't come out the door yet. So let's go.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Well, let's go ahead and bring a caller on the line. 614 area code is the number, calling from a 614 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Doug, and I'm calling from Columbus, Ohio, branch 78. And I would like to thank Mike for what he just stated. He's going to have my vote. And I'll get the word out, word of mouth. Hopefully Columbus will be supporting him. I can't guarantee that. But in short, I'm due to retire, but I'm going to pull my retirement because I don't trust what's going to happen with the OPM. If I were to do completed retirement, it's just not there. And I do support Mike standing up and putting a stop to violence in the workplace. So I guess I'll hang up and listen. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Doug from Ohio, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Any reaction to that, Mike?
Yeah, one of the issues we had in the last contract, I made mention that how the thing kind of goes on, and then the terms are retroactive back to the expiration of the contract. And what they did was people, when they retire, the annuity is calculated. OPM is the agency that calculates the annuity, and it's based on the pay that the Postal Service tells them you're making. Well, then you get these retroactive pay raises, and they got to recalculate the thing. But I know people are still getting their annuities recalculated from the last contract, which was agreed to like 4 years ago. So that does take a long time, and I don't blame the brother at all for waiting around to see what the terms are actually going to be, waiting for him to get his back pay so that they can properly calculate what his annuity would be, and he'll know what his annuity will be so he can plan his finances and see if he's going to be able to retire or not. So that's another issue with the delay in the contract negotiations.
Right. This caller is from a 617 area code. Caller from a 617 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is John Murphy. I'm out of Naples, Florida.
John from Florida, what's on your mind?
I'm on the steering committee for BFN. We have a meeting tomorrow morning to discuss moving forward with nationwide contract rallies for a fair contract now. I also want to highlight the fact that this is a momentum in the NALC that the rank and file should not sit back and let dissipate. Most of the branches across the country have old guards in it, right? They support Renfro. They support not actually getting out on the streets. We have a small window from 2025 to 2026 to change our branches. And I recommend everyone to buy the book from the Teamsters from a Democratic Union that's called, I just had it here. The book is called Running for a Local Union Office. And that's where the change has to start. It doesn't just start with voting out Renfro. If you've ever been an organizer around long enough, you know you can replace one boss with another boss. So you still come across the same problem. So we need to change our branches. We need to put new blood with new ideas in there, with bold ideas. We have Trump now attacking federal workers. Our trans rights in the workplace are getting attacked, getting eroded. And the next thing is going to be the gay rights will be eroded. It's one attack on one worker is going to be an attack on all workers. So I just came on here to say solidarity with everyone that voted no. Don't have any hostility towards the people that voted yes. Your enemy is the boss, not your coworkers. And to help organize resistance and reform in your branch level. And shout out to Mike Caref.
John,
hey, John,
from
how you doing,
Florida,
brother?
thank you for the call. I really appreciate it, and that's an important note about making sure to get active in your local unions, whatever form that might take. I think that's how, the NALC at the national level is not going to be able to lead a fight, no matter who is the president, without strong locals and strong and engaged membership. I think that's right. Mike, do you have any reactions to that?
Yeah, so every branch of the NELC has a meeting once a month. And so we planned this March on Washington for March 23rd to give every branch time to have their meetings, and they could also call for a special meeting. But the idea would be we want every branch in the NELC to endorse this thing. And the ones on the East Coast, you can get buses, you can send people. The ones that might be further away, maybe you send a representative or two, somebody fly out there, or just make it available to the members if they want to go or if they're able to go. So, bring in this fight, the local branches, run the union. And one thing that we saw in this referendum on the tentative agreement is that a lot of branches, John said, hey, we got a lot of old guard kind of branches or whatever. And you got a lot of branches that stood up and said, no, we're not gonna support this contract the way it's written. So there's definitely that dynamic going on, and all we can do is encourage the people to get more involved and to take an active role in our future. And that starts with getting a good contract. That starts with mobilizing our members and getting the public on our side, which is what we're trying to do here.
We got another caller.
So I encourage them to get on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you would like to get where these callers are, it's 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Mike, I think I heard a child in the background. Do you need to go ahead and roll out?
No, she's okay. The teacher walked her out. I'm in the parking lot. We're good. She just went and got in the car because she's not a letter carrier. She said she was cold. I'm like, why are you cold, kid?
This caller's from a 715 area code. Caller from a 715 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Also, you don't have to give your last name. You can if you want, but you don't have to. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Okay, my name is Harley, and I'm in Wisconsin. I'm a city carrier.
Harley from Wisconsin. What's on your mind?
All right, so I think the contract should really get extended. Instead of ending in 26, we should probably go to year 28. Just a suggestion, just a year to throw out there. Sort of rejecting it, we may as well kind of beef up the contract and, extend it a little bit longer duration. Wondering what your thoughts are on that real quick.
Do you have any other questions? We'll take that. We'll let you go, but I want to get any other questions, and we'll answer both of them if you've got another one. Harley, you are you're breaking up. I don't know if you're in a bad service area, but I'm having difficulty hearing you.
You want me to just answer that question about the length of the contract?
Harley hung up. Yeah, so Harley's question was about extending the
I got the
contract.
question.
So what are your thoughts on that, Mike?
So the length of the contract is normally a negotiation. I mean, we have actuaries and economists, as does the other side. And, you're looking at how do you think the economy is going to fare going forward. And so if you think that, wages are going to go up, then we would want a shorter contract if we thought that, because we'd want to renegotiate as wages go up. We'd want to renegotiate so that we can get some of those higher wages. If we felt the opposite, if we felt that our wages would be, say, higher than the rate of inflation going forward, then we want a longer contract. So that's one of the factors. President Renfro believes that we should negotiate a contract that ends in November, which is what he did through the tentative agreement. It ends in November of 2026. We could easily extend it to November of 2027 or November of 2028. There's a movement out there, I think, from the UAW that everyone should align their contracts to end on May the 1st. So that's another factor or thought process that, that could come into the thing. But anyway, those are just some of the factors. I wouldn't micromanage it. I mean, that's up to the president to determine what would be our best strategy on that.
Another caller. This caller from a 773 area code. Caller from a 773 area
That's
code.
Chicago.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Rodney Weatherspoon from Branch 11.
Rodney from Branch 11. What's on your mind?
Man, just this one. I've been a carrier for 11. Coming up on 11 years. This is the first time I've ever been proud to be in the NALC. I'm happy about the members fighting back for ourselves, because the post office that took a decline.
Always glad to hear folks that are proud to be members of their unions. Rodney, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, not too much. Just happy our union stood together and voted that terrible contract down.
All right, thanks for the call, Rodney. Appreciate it.
Me too, brother.
If you want to get where he was, you can give us a call, 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. Caller from a 269 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Michigan.
Hey, this is Brian. I'm a pretty new union member, so I don't even know the branch number that I'm a part of yet. But anyway, hey, just quick, two quick questions. One would be something I've been thinking about is with Mike and James Henry both running for 2026. I know this is kind of down the road, but what's Mike's opinion on of having two people running against Brian Renfro? Doesn't that kind of weaken our solidarity of getting him out? And feel free to explain that. And then also, just curious where Mike stands on getting all the carriers back to a single pay table. I think that should be probably the number one goal of the NALC, is getting carriers back to table one pay. The second table basically creates another class of carrier. There's about $100,000 difference over the 13 to 15 years it takes you to get to top step. And I'm curious where Mike stands on that, because I think that needs to be the number one. So I'll take the answer off the air. Thank you so much for everything you guys do. Bye.
Thanks, Brian. Mike, reactions?
Yeah. So there's currently in our contract, and it came in January 10th of 2013, where there's two tables. And so the people that started before that date are in table one, and the people after that date are in table two. And with this new contract, and really just with the passage of time, because you go up the pay chart and you get to the top, and it's not a two-tier system, because when you get to the top step in table one and table two, it's exactly the same. So because time has elapsed since 2013, 99 or just a huge percent, everybody is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, in the same table. The problem is we were consolidated into table two and not table one. And table one was a much better table for us. A lot of the raises were front loaded. The starting pay was way higher. And it just, you got your raises up front, and then it was kind of the little raises were at the end, whereas this contract, this table 2, is completely prorated. So there's this long march all the way to the top that is, definitely in the interest of the Postal Service and not in our interest, because in the table 2, in most places in the country, it takes like 10 years before you're making like a decent wage, like a decent middle class wage. Whereas before, you started off with a pretty decent pay already in table 1, and 2-3 years later, you were good. You could go buy a house. You could, you were solidly in the middle class. So I do agree we should all be in the same pay table, but it should be table 1, not table 2. So that's one thing we're looking for out of this contract. The issue of the election in 2026, I'm going to leave that one alone, just because the election is not until the fall of 2026, and we'll see who the candidates are going to be at that time. I'm a candidate for president. I'm running my campaign, and we'll see what the members want to do. But I don't want to take away their right to, make the choice of the person that they want. It's not who I want. It's who the members want as their president. And also don't want President Renfro to win another term. So we do have both of these factors, and we're talking and trying to figure out what's going to be in the best interest of the members, with also making sure that the members are going to be picking and choosing who their candidate for president is, or who they want as their president of the union in 2026. But it's so far down the road, I don't have anything concrete for you on that right now.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And yeah, like you said, the election's a ways away. There are plenty of time between now and then to have discussions about that sort of thing. So we don't have any, we got one more caller on the line. This caller from a 508 area code. 508 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm Greg. I'm a branch president of 334 outside of Boston. Mike, I organized my branch to overwhelmingly vote no, and I think most of my carriers did, or my members did. One of the concerns that we've been talking about is I've been calling it the orange card. There's a new president, seems to be attacking government workers. I know we weren't a part of the email that Shadow President Musk sent out the other day, but do you think Trump could ever play a factor in any of these negotiations, influencing the arbitrator? That's just one of my main concerns. I would still vote no anyways, but him being president now, not a union-friendly president, seems to be a concern among some people. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, when they were negotiating the terms of this contract, Biden was the president, and, the terms suck. So I don't know. I know that the law, the Postal Reorganization Act, which sets forth the parameters for negotiations and collective bargaining and what the standards are, which is comparability to the wages and benefits of those in the private sector, that law is in effect. And, the arbitrators are beholden to the law. As a matter of fact, the Postal Service went in the last time they went to arbitration with the American Postal Workers Union. The Postal Service tried to argue that, their finances and they're broke, or, whatever, that there should be some other consideration outside of that standard that's in the law. And the arbitrator shot him down. It was arbitrator Goldberg. And he's like, no, the statutory provisions are what I'm going to look at here, not outside factors. And I would consider who the president of the United States is to be an outside factor. It may come into play at some point, but one, I wouldn't run scared just because of it. And two, we don't know what that factor would be. So we just have to kind of fight our fight. And I think that means standing up for a good contract, and that's what we're going to do.
Appreciate the call and appreciate the sentiment on that, Mike. I completely agree. And just to add on your response to that question, probably the best single improvement that letter carriers saw as a craft came under President Nixon. Also, not a union-friendly kind of person. It came as a result of wildcat strikes, we all know, in 1970 and the big strikes across the country, and so there was a lot of pressure there to give letter carriers a good deal. But I think history is a teacher there. As far as what you can get even from friendly actors. Of course, Trump is a player here. I think it would be difficult to say that he's not, but that doesn't mean that he can't be brought to give letter carriers a good deal. Exactly how you do that is that's kind of up for discussion, and how much of a role he can play is kind of to be determined. But yeah, like Mike said, just because you have somebody that's not friendly in the White House doesn't mean that you can't get a good contract. So, Mike, we don't have any other callers on the line. I appreciate you staying and taking the calls. You didn't have to do that, and I'm sure that the folks who had their questions answered do as well. Appreciate you being generous with your time. Is there anything else that you want to say before we let you go?
Yeah, man. In closing, you brought up the strike of 1970, and I will say this: we got this march planned for Washington on March 23rd. And 55 years ago, letter carriers went out on strike on March the 17th in 1970. And so they were out on strike for 8 days. And when we march this year in Washington, we'll be marching at the same time that they were on strike 55 years ago. And with that same spirit of here's the kind of job and livelihood that we want. And this is not, it's not based on what somebody else thinks, it's based on what we think we deserve and the hard work that we put in on behalf of the American people. And we ask everyone, letter carriers and every other craft in the Postal Service and all the other unions and the American public to stand with us on that day. And I'm really looking forward to that 1.3 mile march from NALC headquarters to USPS headquarters, March 23rd.
Mike Caref, National Business Agent for Region 3 of the National Association of Letter Carriers. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, good sir. I appreciate you, man.
All right, folks, that is going to be it for us this week. We had a couple other things that we would have liked to have gotten to, but maybe we can get to them next week. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that at tvlr.fm/donate. You can get our merch at tvlr.fm/store. Adam, do you have any other plugs before we wrap up here today?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of stories we didn't get to this week. Some big union news. I mean, it was just a lot to try to cover and digest this week. There was updates from REI, updates with Costco. Whole Foods, right? There was a Whole Foods that was organized, and so Amazon's facing, union threats on multiple directions now, so that's really exciting. There was a lot of, other political updates, obviously, with the new administration that we didn't get to. Some of the callers, alluded to some of those issues. So I'll just say this, that as a unionist, I stand in solidarity with working class people, regardless of what job they have, what they look like, where they come from, what they talk like. If you're a worker, I'm for you, and I'll stand beside you and in solidarity with you, and I want you to have a better life. And so I think it's important that we really try to engage with folks in that spirit of solidarity and not allow division to wreak havoc on our democracy and our communities. There's a lot of folks who want us divided based on race and gender and religion and nationality and all these other factors. But the vast majority of us have a lot in common. Vast majority of us have to work, and we have to sell our labor for a living. That's how we take care of our families. We are the ones who power this economy, and it's up to us to really stick together. So that said, yeah, there were a lot of stories we didn't get to. Definitely want to remind folks to call in throughout the week, 844-899-TVLR. You can leave a voicemail. We always appreciate that. Could be responding to something that we said or something a guest said. It could be asking us questions that you want us to respond to. That's always interesting when we get, topic suggestions, that kind of thing. Or just share something that's grinding your gears. We are a platform by and for working class folks. We're here to amplify working class voices. So yeah, leave us a voicemail throughout the week, 844-899-TVLR. We appreciate the feedback. So let us know, what you want us to cover on the show, who you'd like for us to interview, that kind of thing. The feedback is really, really helpful. And if you've got someone that you want us to interview on the show, help us get connected, right? If you are connected to somebody that you think should be on the program, either as a guest or call in or something like that, definitely reach out, get us connected. And if there are other programs that you listen to that you think we should work with, help us get connected there. Jacob and I are always willing to appear on other folks' podcasts and radio shows and YouTube shows and things like that. If it gives us an opportunity to talk about the labor movement in the South and working class solidarity, we're open to that. So definitely hit us up. And last plugs I will say is go to labornotes.org/events. They do have some trainings and workshops coming up. If you are in Alabama, don't forget the legislative session starts Tuesday. Monday night, Alabama Rise has a legislative action briefing you can tune into on Zoom at 6 o'clock. Again, that's Monday night, February the 3rd. Legislative session starts the next day, so you'll want to be tuning into that, hearing what's, the good, the bad, and the ugly coming out of Montgomery. And, finally, I just encourage wherever you're listening from, get involved, get organized, start talking to folks, find organizations that are doing good work. There's a lot of people are angry and upset right now. A lot of people are feeling a lot of feelings. And I have found it is most helpful to find comrades that you can trust, that you can work with, and that you can do things together with to try to make a difference, make a positive impact in the community. Often at the local level, where you can have more influence. It can be tough to digest everything that happens from DC. But ultimately, the more working class people come together and organize and build community and build structures and build our own power through our unions, through other organizations, the more we can really make a difference. And I think it's a tough time that we're in, because it's pretty clear that we live in a society where a small, wealthy elite hold a tremendous amount of power, and that includes in the media. Right, so that's why we do what we do, is to try to get a different message out in the media. So if you are so moved, please do support us however you can, whether that's liking and subscribing, sharing on social media, chipping in a few bucks online if you can. That really makes a difference. We're a grassroots operation. We don't have Elon Musk or weirdos like that to give us money, nor do we want it. So we appreciate the support. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in today, and look forward to hearing from you.
All right. With that, that's going to be it for us this week, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you find us next week, and we'll see you then.